She was 3 days from being thrown into the streets, and everyone in town knew it. Lynn May Carter stood in the center of Red Hollow's main square, her patched dress drawing sneers from women dripping in silk and spite. She had no money, no family, no way out. The entire town had already decided her fate. She'd be gone by week's end, another forgotten girl swallowed by the frontier's cruelty. But across the dusty street, a mountain of a man named Elias Boone was watching, and what he was about to do would shatter every rule this town lived by. If you want to see how one impossible choice changes everything, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The sun beat down on Red Hollow like a punishment. Lynn May Carter kept her eyes on the ground as she crossed the town square, her worn boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. The fabric bag she carried was nearly empty, just a few potatoes and half a loaf of day-old bread she'd bought with the last coins from her sewing work. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. She could feel the stares before she heard the voices. Well, look what wandered into daylight. Lynn May's shoulders tightened, but she didn't stop walking. She knew that voice. Everyone in Red Hollow knew that voice. Margaret Ashford stood in front of the general store with two other women, all three dressed in the kind of clothes that announced money and status before a word was even spoken. Margaret's dress was deep emerald with ivory lace at the collar. Her companions wore equally expensive fabrics, their hair styled in elaborate updos that probably took their maids an hour to perfect. Lynn May wore a dress she'd patched so many times she'd lost count. The fabric had been blue once. Now it was closer to gray, with visible squares of mismatched cloth covering the tears and worn spots. She'd done her best to make the patches neat, even decorative, but there was no hiding what they were. Evidence of poverty. "I'm talking to you, girl." Lynn May stopped. She wanted to keep walking, to pretend she hadn't heard, but that would only make things worse. In a town like Red Hollow, ignoring Margaret Ashford was social suicide, and Lynn May's social standing was already hanging by a thread so thin it was practically invisible. She turned slowly, keeping her expression neutral. "Mrs. Ashford." Margaret's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "We were just discussing the standards of our community. What's acceptable in polite society and what isn't." The two women beside her, Sarah Whitmore and Elizabeth Chen, exchanged knowing looks. Sarah was the banker's wife. Elizabeth owned the boarding house where most of the town's seamstresses rented rooms. Lynn May owed Elizabeth 3 weeks of back rent. "Standards are important," Margaret continued, taking a step closer. Her perfume was overwhelming, a thick floral scent that made Lynn May's empty stomach turn. "They're what separates civilized people from, well, from those who've given up entirely." Lynn May said nothing. She'd learned the hard way that responding only gave women like Margaret more ammunition. That dress, for instance. Margaret gestured with one gloved hand, her expression one of exaggerated concern. "Dear, is that really the best you can manage? Even the Chinese workers at the railroad camp have better clothes than that." The comment was designed to cut in multiple directions. Lynn May's mother had been Chinese, her father a white surveyor who died before Lynn May was born. Her mother had passed when Lynn May was 12, leaving her alone in a world that had very specific ideas about where a girl like her belonged. "I manage with what I have," Lynn May said quietly. "Clearly," Sarah Whitmore stepped forward, circling Lynn May like she was inspecting a horse at auction. "I have rags in my kitchen that look more dignified than this. How do you even show your face in public?" "Maybe she doesn't have shame," Elizabeth Chen suggested. "Some people are raised without it." That one landed hard. Lynn May's mother had worked herself to death trying to provide a respectable life for her daughter, and everyone in Red Hollow knew it. Suggesting she'd been raised without proper values was a direct insult to her mother's memory. Lynn May's hands tightened on her fabric bag. She wanted to say something, to defend herself, to point out that these women had never worked a day in their lives while she'd been sewing and mending since she was 8 years old. But the words wouldn't come. They never did when she needed them most. "Nothing to say?" Margaret's voice was falsely sweet. "Well, I suppose that's for the best. Words won't fix that disaster you're wearing." A small crowd had gathered. That's how it always worked in Red Hollow. Humiliation was entertainment, especially when it was someone powerless being taken down by someone important. Lynn May could see people watching from the general store, from the saloon across the street, from the windows of nearby buildings. "You know what I think?" Margaret said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I think it's disrespectful to the rest of us when someone parades around looking like they crawled out of a garbage heap. It brings down the whole town." "Makes decent people uncomfortable," Sarah agreed. Elizabeth nodded. "Sets a bad example for children." Lin May felt heat rising in her face. Not anger. She'd learned to bury that deep where it couldn't get her in trouble. But shame. Deep, burning shame that made her want to disappear into the ground. "Maybe someone should have a word with her landlady," Margaret said, looking directly at Elizabeth, "about whether someone with such little regard for propriety should be allowed to rent a room in a respectable establishment." Elizabeth smiled. "I've been thinking the same thing." The threat was clear. Lin May was already 3 weeks behind on rent. If Elizabeth decided to evict her, Lin May would have nowhere to go. No family, no friends with extra space, no money for a deposit somewhere else. She'd be on the street. "I'll have the rent by Friday," Lin May said, hating how small her voice sounded. "Will you?" Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "Because I've heard that before." "I have orders to finish. People who've promised to pay—" "Promises don't spend like cash," Elizabeth interrupted. "And frankly, Lin May, I'm not sure your sewing business is viable anymore. Word gets around about quality, standards." It was a lie, and everyone knew it. Lin May's sewing was the best in town. Careful, precise, creative. But quality didn't matter when the women with money had decided you were beneath them. "Maybe you should find other work," Margaret suggested. "The saloon is always looking for girls." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Working at the saloon meant serving drinks and tolerating drunk men and worse. It meant being seen as a certain type of woman, the kind who'd lost all claim to respectability. "I'm a seamstress," Lin May said quietly. "You're a girl in rags," Margaret shot back. There's a difference." Sarah laughed. "Maybe she could patch together some dignity while she's at it." More laughter. The crowd was growing. Lin May could feel dozens of eyes on her, judging, enjoying her humiliation. This is what passed for entertainment in Red Hollow. Watching someone powerless be torn apart by people who'd never faced a hard day in their lives. "Look at her just standing there," Margaret said. "No fight at all." "It's pathetic." Lin May's throat was tight. She wanted to run, but that would only make them laugh harder. She wanted to defend herself, but what was there to say? Everything they were saying was designed to be true enough to hurt. Yes, her dress was patched. Yes, she was behind on rent. Yes, she was alone and vulnerable and one bad week away from complete disaster. "I think we've made our point," Elizabeth said. "Some people simply don't belong in polite society. They drag everyone else down." "Someone should tell her," Sarah added, "before she embarrasses herself further." Margaret stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost kind, which somehow made it worse. "Lin May, dear, I'm going to be honest with you because no one else will. You're not going to make it here. You don't have the connections, the money, or frankly the breeding. The kindest thing you could do is accept that and move on before you completely humiliate yourself." "Move on to where?" The words were out before Lin May could stop them. Margaret shrugged. "That's not my problem, but staying here pretending you're something you're not? That's just sad." Lin May felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart. That had been breaking slowly for years, something deeper, the last fragile bit of hope that maybe, somehow, things could get better. "She doesn't even have the sense to leave when she's not wanted," Sarah muttered. "Probably has nowhere else to go," Elizabeth said, "which really just proves the point, doesn't it?" The crowd murmured agreement. Lin May could feel the weight of their judgment, their satisfaction at seeing someone lower than them get pushed even lower. In a hard town full of hard people, this was how you proved you were better than someone. You found the weakest person and made sure everyone knew it. Lin May was about to turn away to finally escape this nightmare when a voice cut through the crowd like an axe through wood. "That's enough." The voice was deep, rough, and completely unfamiliar with the concept of indoor volume. Every head in the square turned toward it. A man stepped out of the shadows in front of the trading post. Lin May had seen him around town a few times, always from a distance. He was hard to miss. Easily over 6 feet tall, built like he was carved from the same mountains he supposedly lived in. Dark hair fell past his collar, a thick beard covered half his face, and his clothes looked like they'd been worn for function, not appearance. Buckskin pants, a worn shirt, heavy boots that had seen serious miles. Elias Boone, The Mountain Trapper. Lin Mei knew the name because everyone knew the name, but she'd never been close enough to actually see him clearly. He rarely came to town, and when he did, he handled his business quickly and left. He was walking toward them now, and the crowd parted like water. Margaret recovered first, her smile returning but harder now, more forced. "Mr. Boone, this is a private conversation." Didn't sound private. Elias stopped a few feet from Lin Mei, his eyes moving from Margaret to Sarah to Elizabeth and back. Sounded like three grown women ganging up on someone half their size. "We were simply having a discussion about community standards." "No," Elias interrupted. "You were tearing into this girl because it made you feel important. I could hear you from across the street." Margaret's face flushed. "How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth?" Elias crossed his arms over his chest. "You want to talk about standards? Fine. Let's talk about the standard that says three wealthy women shouldn't gang up on someone who's clearly struggling, or the standard that says you don't humiliate people in public for entertainment." "Mr. Boone, you clearly don't understand the situation," Elizabeth began. "I understand plenty. You're her landlady, right?" He nodded toward Elizabeth. "And you're making sure everyone knows she owes you money. That's not helping her pay it. That's just making her life harder. She needs to understand consequences. She understands, trust me." Elias looked at Lin Mei then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her throat tighten. It wasn't pity. It was something else. Recognition, maybe. "You think she doesn't know she's struggling? You think she needs you to point it out?" "This doesn't concern you," Margaret said coldly. "You made it concern me when you decided to do it in the middle of town where everyone could watch." Elias gestured to the crowd. "You wanted an audience. Well, now you've got one. Let's make sure they hear the whole story." He turned slightly, addressing the crowd directly. "Anyone here think less of someone for wearing patched clothes?" Silence. A few people shifted uncomfortably. "Because I'll tell you what I see when I look at those patches. I see someone who knows how to make things last. Someone who can take something worn and broken and fix it well enough to keep using it. That's a skill. That's worth something." Margaret laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, please." "You know how to sew?" Elias asked her. "I have people for that." "Exactly. You pay people to do things you can't do yourself. This girl?" He nodded toward Lin Mei. "She can do it herself. She can take care of herself. That's more than most people in this town can say." "Being poor isn't a virtue," Sarah snapped. "Neither is being cruel." Elias's voice didn't rise, but it got harder. "You want to talk about what brings down a community? It's not patched dresses. It's people with full bellies making fun of people who are hungry. It's people with safe homes threatening to put someone on the street. That's what makes a place ugly." Elizabeth drew herself up. "Mr. Boone, I don't think you understand how things work here. I understand fine. You've got money and status, so you think you can treat people however you want, and maybe you can. But that doesn't make it right." He looked at Lin Mei again. "What's your name?" "Lin Mei Carter." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "Lin Mei, you finished those sewing orders you mentioned?" She nodded. "Most of them. 2 more to go." "How much do you need for rent?" The question caught her off guard. That's not... How much?" $12. The words felt like glass in her throat. Elias reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. He counted out bills, then handed them to Lin Mei. "Here's 15, 12 for rent, 3 for food." Lin Mei stared at the money like it might bite her. "I can't." "You can. You will." He pressed the bills into her hand. "Pay your rent. Feed yourself. Finish your orders." "I'll pay you back." "Wasn't a loan." He turned back to Elizabeth. "She's paid through the end of the month. We clear?" Elizabeth's face was pinched with barely contained fury, but she nodded. "Crystal clear." "Good." Elias looked at Margaret and Sarah. "And you two can find someone else to use for entertainment. This girl's off limits." Margaret's eyes were ice. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Boone. You don't know what kind of person she is." "Don't I?" Elias's smile was thin. "I know she's working hard enough to wear her dress to patches. I know she's trying to pay her debts. I know she's standing here taking abuse from women who've never struggled a day in their lives. That tells me everything I need to know." He turned to Lin Mei. "You eaten today?" She hesitated, then shook her head. Come on then. Restaurant across the street makes a decent stew. I have to finish. You have to eat. Work can wait 20 minutes. He started walking, then looked back when she didn't follow. That wasn't a request. Lin Mei glanced at Margaret, at Elizabeth, at the crowd of people still watching. Every instinct told her to refuse, to not make this worse, to not accept help from a stranger. But the money in her hand was real, and the hunger in her stomach was real. And for the first time in weeks, something that wasn't terrible was happening. She followed him. The crowd murmured as she walked past. She could feel Margaret's eyes burning into her back. This was going to cost her. She knew that. Accepting help from Elias Boone, letting him embarrass the most powerful women in Red Hollow on her behalf, she'd pay for that somehow. But right now, in this moment, she was walking away from her humiliation instead of drowning in it. That had to count for something. The restaurant was called Molly's, a small place with 6 tables and a kitchen that smelled like heaven. Elias led her to a corner table, waved at the woman behind the counter, and sat down without ceremony. Lin Mei sat across from him, feeling desperately out of place. The other diners were staring. Of course they were staring. She was a girl in patches sitting with the mountain trapper who'd just publicly defended her against the town's elite. 2 stews, Elias called out, and bread, real bread, not those rock-hard biscuits. The woman, Molly, presumably, nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. Silence settled over the table. Lin Mei didn't know what to say. Thank you seemed insufficient. She didn't even know why he'd helped her. You're probably wondering why I did that, Elias said, as if reading her mind. Lin Mei nodded. Truth? I don't know exactly. He leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. I was getting supplies. Heard the commotion. Came out to see what was happening. Saw 3 rich women tearing into you like wolves on a deer, and I thought, not today. You didn't have to get involved. No, I didn't, but I did anyway. He studied her face. How long you been in Red Hollow? All my life. Family? My mother died when I was 12. My father died before I was born. He nodded like this confirmed something. And you've been on your own since then? Yes. Making it work as a seamstress? Trying to, but it's getting harder. It wasn't a question. Lin Mei looked down at her hands. The women with money decide who gets work. If they don't like you, they make sure nobody else will hire you either, Elias finished. That's how it works in places like this. Power isn't just about money. It's about controlling who has access to money. Lin Mei was surprised by how well he understood. You've seen it before? I've seen a lot of things. Molly arrived with 2 bowls of stew and a basket of bread. The smell made Lin Mei's mouth water. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten a real meal. Eat, Elias said. We can talk after. Lin Mei didn't need to be told twice. She picked up the spoon and started eating, trying not to shovel food into her mouth like a starving animal, even though that's exactly what she was. The stew was thick with beef and vegetables, rich and savory, and so good it almost made her cry. Elias ate too, but slower, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. When did you last eat? He asked finally. Yesterday morning, bread and water. And before that? 2 days before. Some potatoes. He set down his spoon. You're starving. I'm managing. No, you're starving. There's a difference. He pushed the bread basket toward her. Eat as much as you want. I'll order more if you need it. Lin Mei took a piece of bread, forcing herself to eat slowly even though her body was screaming for more. Why are you doing this? Because somebody should. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now. He broke off a piece of his own bread. Look, I'm not good at explaining things. I live alone in the mountains. I trap, I hunt, I trade. I don't come to town often because I don't like most of the people here. They're small, mean, always looking for someone to step on so they can feel taller. And you're different? I try to be. He met her eyes. I grew up poor, Lin Mei, really poor. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to have people look at you like you're dirt. And I made myself a promise a long time ago. If I ever had the power to help someone in that situation, I would. The sincerity in his voice made something tight in Lin Mei's chest loosen slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Helping you back there probably made your situation worse. He was right. Lin Mei knew he was right. Margaret Ashford controls half the social connections in this town. Elizabeth Chen is my landlady, and Sarah Whitmore's husband runs the bank. I just watched you humiliate all three of them in public. So what happens now? Now? Lin Mei set down her spoon. Now they make sure I never work in this town again. They'll spread rumors about my sewing quality. They'll tell their friends not to hire me. They'll make sure everyone knows I'm trouble. Even though you're not. Doesn't matter. They have power. I don't. She looked at the money he'd given her, still clutched in her other hand. This will pay my rent through the end of the month. But after that, I don't know. Elias was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. What if you didn't stay in Red Hollow? Where would I go? Anywhere else. Lin Mei laughed, but there was no humor in it. I have no money, no transportation, no connections anywhere else. Leaving Red Hollow would be the same as staying, just in a different location. What if you had help? Something in his tone made her look up. What kind of help? Elias hesitated, and Lin Mei realized she'd never seen him uncertain before. He seemed like the kind of man who always knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it. But right now he looked almost nervous. I have a proposition, he said finally, and I want you to hear me out before you say no. All right. I live in the mountains. Good land, clean water, plenty of game. I built a cabin there 5 years ago. It's not fancy, but it's solid. Warm in winter, cool in summer. I make a decent living trapping and trading. Lin Mei didn't understand where this was going. Okay, I'm also alone up there. Completely alone. And while I'm fine with that most of the time, it's not exactly practical. There are things I can't do well. Cooking beyond basic survival, mending clothes properly, growing vegetables, preserving food. I'm barely keeping my shirts from falling apart. Understanding started to dawn. You want to hire me as a housekeeper? No? Elias shook his head. I want to marry you. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Lin Mei stared at him. You want to what? Marry you, as in legally married, partners. We just met. I know. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. This is insane. Probably. Elias leaned forward. But hear me out. You need to get out of Red Hollow. We both know that. After what happened today, you've got maybe a few weeks before they find a way to force you out anyway. And when that happens, you'll have nothing and nowhere to go. Lin Mei wanted to argue, but he was right. So your solution is marriage. My solution is partnership. Look, I don't need a wife in the traditional sense. I don't need someone to warm my bed or give me children or any of that. What I need is someone capable, someone who can handle themselves, someone who won't fall apart when things get hard. And what you need is safety, security, and a place where people can't hurt you anymore. This is crazy. Is it? Or is it practical? He held up a hand, counting on his fingers. You get a home, food, protection, freedom from this town and everyone in it. I get someone who can cook, sew, help with preserving food, maybe even trade some of your sewing work for goods we need. We both benefit. Marriage is supposed to be about love. For some people, maybe. For people like us, sometimes it's just about survival. His voice softened. I'm not asking you to love me, Lin Mei. I'm asking you to survive with me. Everything else, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we're still better off than we are now. Lin Mei's mind was racing. This was the most ridiculous proposal she'd ever heard. Marriage to a complete stranger, a mountain trapper she'd spoken to for less than an hour. A man who lived alone in the wilderness. It was also the first real option anyone had offered her in years. Why me? She asked. You could marry anyone. Could I? Most women in this town want comfort, society, status. I can't offer any of that. I can offer hard work, isolation, and a life that's honest but not easy. You're the only person I've met who might actually be suited for it. Because I'm desperate. Because you're strong. His voice was firm. You've been surviving on your own since you were 12 years old. You've been taking abuse from people who should know better and still getting up every morning to try again. That's not desperation. That's strength. And strength is exactly what mountain life requires. Lin Mei looked down at her stew, now cold. Her whole life, she'd been told she wasn't enough. Not pretty enough, not wealthy enough, not connected enough. Not white enough. Not Chinese enough. Just not enough. And here was a man telling her she was exactly what he needed. I need time to think, she said finally. How much time? I don't know. It's a huge decision. It is. But you don't have much time, Lin Mei. You know that. Elias stood up, dropping coins on the table for the meal. I'm staying at the boarding house tonight, room 12. If you decide you want to do this, come find me before I leave tomorrow at dawn. If you don't, I'll head back to the mountains and you'll never see me again. That's it? That's all the time I get? That's all the time either of us has. Life doesn't wait, and neither do the people trying to destroy you. He headed for the door, then paused and looked back. For what it's worth. I think you'd do just fine in the mountains. Better than you're doing here, anyway. Then he was gone. Lin Mei sat alone at the table, her mind spinning. Marriage. To a stranger. Moving to the mountains. Leaving Red Hollow. Leaving everything she'd ever known. It was insane. It was also her only option. She looked down at the money in her hand. $15. More than she'd had in months. Enough to pay rent, buy food, survive a little longer. But survival wasn't living. She'd been surviving for years, and look where it had gotten her. Maybe it was time to do something different. Maybe it was time to take the risk. Lin Mei stood up, tucked the money safely into her pocket, and walked out into the fading sunlight. The town square was nearly empty now, the entertainment over. But she could still feel eyes watching from windows, could still hear the whispers that would follow her for days. She had until dawn to decide her future. Part of her thought she was crazy to even consider it. But a bigger part, the part that was tired of being hungry, tired of being afraid, tired of being small, that part was already packing. Lin Mei didn't go straight back to her room. She walked through Red Hollow as the sun dropped lower, painting the dusty streets in shades of orange and red. Her feet carried her without conscious thought past the general store, past the saloon, past the church with its white steeple that had never felt like sanctuary to her. She ended up at the edge of town where the buildings gave way to scrubland, and the first hints of the mountains rose in the distance. She'd lived here her whole life and had never been more than 5 miles from the town center. The world beyond Red Hollow was a mystery to her, a dangerous mystery that people whispered about but rarely explored. Elias Boone lived out there, alone, and he was asking her to join him. The practical part of her brain was screaming that this was madness. You didn't marry strangers. You didn't abandon everything you knew for a life in the wilderness with a man who was essentially offering a business arrangement. That wasn't how things worked. But the louder part, the part that had been growing stronger with every humiliation, every hungry night, every morning she woke up wondering if this would be the day she finally broke. That part was asking a different question. What exactly was she holding on to here? She turned and walked back toward the boarding house. Not the front entrance where Elizabeth Chen would see her, but around the side where the outside stairs led to the upper rooms. She climbed quietly, her worn boots barely making a sound on the wooden steps. Room 12 was at the end of the hall. Lin Mei stood outside the door for a long moment, her hand raised to knock, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. This was insane, completely insane. She knocked. The door opened immediately like he'd been waiting right on the other side. Elias looked exactly the same as he had an hour ago. Solid, calm, certain. He didn't seem surprised to see her. "Can I come in?" Lin Mei asked. He stepped aside without a word. The room was basic. A bed, a chair, a small table, a washstand. Elias's few belongings were already packed in a worn leather bag. A rifle leaned against the wall near the window. Everything about the space said temporary, like he was ready to leave at a moment's notice. Lin Mei stayed near the door. "I have questions." "Good. Ask them." She took a breath. "If I say yes to this, if I agree to marry you, what exactly does that mean? What are you expecting from me?" Elias sat down in the chair, leaving her the bed, but she remained standing. "Fair question. Here's what I need. Someone who can manage a household in mountain conditions. That means cooking, preserving food, mending clothes, keeping the cabin in order. I'd also want you to help with the garden when spring comes. Maybe trade some of your sewing work with other trappers for goods we can't make ourselves. And what do I get? Protection, security. Half of everything I own, legally. If something happens to me, the cabin and the land are yours. You'd inherit my trapping contracts, my trading relationships, everything. You wouldn't be left with nothing. Lin Mei hadn't expected that. You'd put that in writing? Already talked to the clerk about it. We can have papers drawn up before we leave. And the marriage itself? She forced herself to ask the question that was burning in her mind. What are you expecting from me as a wife? Elias met her eyes directly. I'm expecting a partner. Someone I can trust to hold up their end of keeping us both alive and fed. That's it. That's it? That's it. He paused. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a man, and you're a woman, and we'd be living alone together. Maybe something develops between us over time. Maybe it doesn't. But I'm not asking for that now, and I won't force it ever. You'd have your own space in the cabin, your own bed, your own privacy. Whatever happens beyond the practical arrangement would be because we both wanted it, not because I demanded it. The knot in Lin Mei's stomach loosened slightly. And if I wanted to leave? If I decided mountain life wasn't for me? Then you leave. I won't stop you. Though I'll point out that leaving would be harder once winter sets in. So if you're going to bail, do it before the first snow. His bluntness was almost refreshing. No pretty words, no false promises, just cold practicality. Why are you really doing this? Lin Mei asked. And don't give me that line about needing someone to cook and sew. You've managed alone for 5 years. Elias was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on the arm of the chair. You want the truth? Yes. I'm tired of being alone. Not lonely. There's a difference. I like solitude. I like the quiet. But there are things you can't do by yourself. And I'm getting to the age where that matters. I need someone who can help build something that lasts. And more than that? He looked at her again, and there was something raw in his expression. I saw you standing there today, taking abuse from people who should have been helping you, and it made me angry, really angry, because I've been that person. I know what it feels like to be powerless while people with everything tear you apart for fun. And I thought, if I can stop that for one person, if I can pull one person out of that hell, then maybe all the years I spent in it weren't completely wasted. The honesty in his words hit Lin Mei harder than any rehearsed speech could have. You're trying to save me. No, I'm trying to give you a choice. There's a difference. He stood up, crossing to the window. Saving implies you're helpless. You're not. You're strong, capable, and you've survived things that would have broken weaker people. But strength doesn't matter if you're drowning. Sometimes you just need someone to throw you a rope. And you're the rope. I'm offering to be. Lin Mei sat down on the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. I'd have to leave everything behind. This town is the only home I've ever known. Is it home, though? Or is it just the place where you've been suffering? She couldn't answer that. I know change is scary, Elias continued, especially when you don't know what's on the other side. But you know what's here. You know how this ends if you stay. Elizabeth will evict you eventually. Margaret and her friends will make sure you can't work. You'll end up in the saloon, or worse, and they'll feel justified in how they treated you because you'll have become exactly what they always said you were. You don't know that, don't I? How many times have you seen it happen to other women in your position? Too many. Lin Mei had watched other girls, poor girls, immigrant girls, girls without families or connections, get chewed up by Red Hollow and spit out. Some ended up working at the saloon. Some married men who treated them like property. Some just disappeared, gone to other towns where the same cycle probably repeated. What's mountain life like? She asked. Really like. Not the romanticized version. Elias turned from the window. Hard. Especially at first. The cabin is comfortable but basic. No neighbors, no shops, no conveniences. If we need something, we make it or trade for it. Winter is brutal. Snow 3 feet deep, temperatures that can kill you if you're not careful. We'd be snowed in for weeks at a time with nothing but each other for company. That sounds terrible. It can be. It can also be peaceful. No one judging you, no one controlling you, no one telling you what you're worth. Just work, survival, and the satisfaction of building something with your own hands. And if I hate it, then we deal with that when it happens. But at least you'd have tried. At least you'd know. He came back to the chair, sitting down heavily. Look, I'm not going to pressure you. This is your decision. But I need to know before dawn because that's when I'm leaving. With or without you. Lin Mei looked at her hands. The fingers were calloused from years of sewing, the nails short and practical. Working hands. Her mother had had hands like these. Her mother had also worked herself to death trying to give Lin Mei a better life in Red Hollow. And what had that gotten her? A room she couldn't afford, a business that was being destroyed by petty women, and a future that looked bleaker every day. If I say yes, she said slowly, when would we leave? Tomorrow morning. I'd want to get married first. There's a justice of the peace who can do it quick and legal. Then we head out. That fast? No point in waiting. The longer you stay, the more chances for Margaret and her crew to cause problems. He paused. Also, the weather's turning. We need to get back before the first big snow. How long is the journey? 3 days on foot, 2 if we push hard. Lin Mei tried to imagine it. 3 days walking into wilderness she'd never seen, with a man she barely knew, toward a life she couldn't picture. Every rational part of her brain said this was suicide, but staying felt like suicide too, just slower. I need to think, she said, standing up. I know you said you need an answer by dawn, but I need a few more hours. Fair enough? Elias walked her to the door. One more thing, though. Whatever you decide, keep it quiet. If Elizabeth or Margaret find out you're even considering leaving with me, they'll find a way to stop it. People like that don't like losing control, even over people they claim to despise. They can't stop me from leaving town. No, but they can make it harder. Spread rumors that I kidnapped you, that you're not in your right mind, that I'm dangerous. Small-town people love a scandal, especially if it confirms their prejudices about outsiders. He was right. Lin Mei could already imagine how Margaret would spin it, the poor, desperate Chinese girl being taken advantage of by the wild mountain man. Never mind that Lin Mei was making her own choice. The narrative would be written without her input. I'll be careful, she said. Good. He opened the door for her, checking the hallway first to make sure it was empty. And Lin Mei? Whatever you decide, I meant what I said earlier. You're stronger than they give you credit for. Don't let anyone tell you different. She slipped out into the hallway, moving quickly toward the back stairs. Her heart was still racing, but now it was from something other than fear. It was possibility. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Lin Mei went back to her tiny room on the first floor, barely bigger than a closet, really, and stared at her meager possessions. A few changes of clothes, all patched and worn, her sewing kit, carefully maintained and precious. A small box containing the few items her mother had left her. A jade bracelet, a hair comb, a faded photograph. Everything she owned fit in 2 bags. She tried to eat some of the bread she'd bought earlier, but her stomach was too twisted with nerves to handle food. Instead, she sat on her narrow bed and forced herself to think clearly about what she was considering. Marriage to Elias Boone meant leaving behind everything familiar. It meant hardship, isolation, and a life she couldn't predict. It also meant escape from Red Hollow, from the endless cycle of poverty and humiliation, from the slow death of watching her dreams crumble while people like Margaret smiled. But was escape enough reason to marry someone? A knock on her door made her jump. For a wild second, she thought it might be Elias, but the voice that came through was female. Lin Mei? It's Ruth. Ruth Morrison was one of the few people in Red Hollow who'd ever been kind to Lin Mei. She worked at the general store, and she'd occasionally slipped Lin Mei extra food or fabric scraps when the owner wasn't looking. They weren't exactly friends. Ruth was white and married and belonged to a social class Lin Mei could never access. But she was decent. Lin Mei opened the door. Ruth stood in the hallway, her expression worried. Can I come in? Of course. Ruth entered, closing the door behind her. She was a small woman in her 30s with tired eyes and work-worn hands. I heard what happened today, in the square. News travels fast. Always does. Ruth sat down on the one chair in the room. Are you all right? I'm fine. Lin Mei, I've known you long enough to know when you're lying. What Margaret did today, what all of them did, that was cruel even by their standards. Lin Mei sat back down on her bed. It's nothing I haven't dealt with before. That doesn't make it right. Ruth leaned forward. I also heard that Elias Boone stepped in. Is that true? Yes. And he gave you money for rent? Lin Mei hesitated. How much did Ruth know? How much should she admit? He helped me out, that's all. People are talking, Lin Mei. They're saying he took you to Molly's, that you spent an hour alone with him. That he went back to the boarding house afterward and you showed up there later. I went to thank him for his help. I'm sure you did. Ruth's voice was gentle but firm. But you need to understand what people are going to think. A young woman, alone, spending time with a mountain man like Elias Boone? The gossip is already spreading. By tomorrow, it'll be all over town. Let them gossip. They already think the worst of me anyway. True, but this is different. This gives Margaret ammunition. She can use this to paint you as someone with loose morals, someone who'll throw herself at any man who shows her attention. Ruth paused. She can also use it to justify evicting you for bringing disrepute to the boarding house. Lin May felt cold. Elizabeth already agreed to let me stay through the month. Elias paid her. And Elizabeth can always give the money back and claim some other reason for kicking you out. You know how it works. The rules apply differently depending on who you are. She was right. Of course she was right. Lin May had been naive to think that money would solve the problem. What am I supposed to do? The question came out more desperate than she intended. Ruth looked at her for a long moment. What did Elias Boone want when you went to see him? I don't. Lin May, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here because I've watched you struggle in this town for years, and I'm worried about what happens next, so please, what did he want? Lin May made a decision. If she couldn't trust Ruth, she couldn't trust anyone. He asked me to marry him. Ruth's eyes went wide. He what? He proposed, said he needs a partner for his life in the mountains, and I need a way out of Red Hollow. He's offering marriage as a practical arrangement. Practical arrangement? Ruth repeated slowly. Lin May, that's insane. I know, but it's also the only real option I have. Lin May stood up, pacing the small room. What's my alternative? Stay here and watch Margaret destroy what's left of my sewing business? Wait for Elizabeth to find an excuse to evict me anyway? End up in the saloon or married to someone who'll treat me like property? Those aren't your only options. Yes, they are. You know they are. Lin May stopped pacing, facing Ruth directly. You're kind, Ruth, and I appreciate that, but you're also married to the assistant manager at the general store. You have security, you have respectability, you have a place in this town. I don't. I never will. The best I can hope for here is survival, and even that's not guaranteed. Ruth was quiet for a moment. What did you tell him? I said I needed time to think. And what are you thinking? I'm thinking that Elias Boone is offering me something no one else in this town ever has. A real choice. A chance to build a life on my own terms, even if it's hard. Even if it's scary. But you barely know him. I barely knew Red Hollow would treat me this way either. At least with Elias, I know what I'm getting into. He's been honest about what mountain life is like, what he expects, what he can offer. That's more honesty than I've gotten from anyone here. Ruth stood up, moving to the window. Outside, darkness had fully fallen. The streets of Red Hollow were quiet except for sounds from the saloon. If you do this, if you marry him and leave, you can't come back. Not really. This town won't forgive you for choosing someone like him over staying here and accepting your place. My place being at the bottom, slowly starving. I didn't say it was right. I'm just telling you how it is. Ruth turned back to her. But I'll also tell you this. I've seen Elias Boone come through town for years. He's rough, he's blunt, and he doesn't suffer fools. But I've never seen him be cruel. I've never seen him cheat anyone or mistreat people weaker than him. In a town full of folks who'll smile to your face and stab you in the back, he's the opposite. He'll tell you exactly what he thinks, and then he'll do exactly what he said. You think I should do it? I think you should make the choice that gives you the best chance at a real life. And I don't think that choice is staying here. Ruth came back to Lin May, taking her hands. But if you do this, do it smart. Don't let anyone know until you're already gone. Pack tonight. Leave before dawn. Don't give Margaret and her crew any chance to interfere. Lin May felt tears pricking her eyes. Why are you helping me? Because somebody should. And because I've got a daughter of my own, and I hope if she ever ends up in a situation like yours, someone will help her too. Ruth squeezed her hands. You deserve better than what this town has given you, Lin May. Maybe Elias Boone can provide that. Maybe he can't. But at least with him, you'll have a fighting chance. After Ruth left, Lin May sat in the darkness of her room and made her decision. It wasn't the rational choice. It wasn't the safe choice. But it was her choice. made for her own reasons, on her own terms. She was going to marry Elias Boone. She was going to leave Red Hollow. And whatever came next, she'd face it standing up instead of on her knees. Lin May spent the rest of the night packing quietly. Everything she owned fit into 2 cloth bags, one for clothes, one for her sewing supplies, and her mother's belongings. She worked by candlelight, moving carefully so Elizabeth wouldn't hear from downstairs. When she was finished, she sat on her bed and waited for dawn. Sleep was impossible. Her mind kept racing through everything that could go wrong, every reason this was a terrible idea, every way she might regret this decision. But she also thought about what Ruth had said. "You deserve better than what this town has given you," did she? Lin May had spent so long accepting scraps, accepting cruelty, accepting her place at the bottom of Red Hollow's social order, that she'd almost forgotten she had the right to want more. Almost. The sky was just starting to lighten when she heard the soft knock on her door, 3 taps, quiet but distinct. Lin May opened the door to find Elias standing there, his pack already on his back, his rifle in hand. "You ready?" he asked quietly. Lin May looked back at her room one last time. 12 years of her life had been spent in this building, in spaces just like this one. 12 years of struggling, surviving, hoping things would get better. They hadn't. "I'm ready," she said. She picked up her 2 bags, stepped into the hallway, and closed the door behind her. She didn't lock it. There was nothing inside worth stealing, and she'd never be coming back. They moved quietly through the boarding house and out the back door. Red Hollow was silent at this hour, the streets empty except for a few cats and the distant sound of someone's rooster greeting the dawn. "Justice of the peace lives this way," Elias said, leading her down a side street. "I talked to him yesterday. He's expecting us." The Justice of the Peace was a gray-haired man named Walter Price, who ran the town's legal affairs from his home office. He answered the door in his nightshirt, looking more amused than annoyed at the early hour. "Mr. Boone, Miss Carter, come in." The ceremony, if you could call it that, took less than 10 minutes. Walter had them state their names, confirm they were entering the marriage willingly, and sign the necessary papers. Elias had already arranged for 2 witnesses, Walter's wife and his adult son, both of whom looked half asleep but willing. "By the power vested in me by the territory, I pronounce you husband and wife," Walter said, signing the marriage certificate with a flourish. "Mr. Boone, you may kiss your bride if you'd like." Elias looked at Lin May. "Do you want—" "No," she said quickly. "Fair enough." He turned back to Walter. "The property papers? Right here." Walter produced another document. "As requested, this deed transfers half ownership of your land and cabin to your wife, effective immediately. If anything happens to you, full ownership goes to her. It's all legal and binding." Lin May stared at the paper. Half of everything. He'd actually done it. Elias signed the deed, then handed her the pen. "Your turn." Her hand trembled slightly as she signed her new name for the first time, Lin May Boone. It looked strange on paper, like it belonged to someone else. "Congratulations," Walter said, handing them the official copies. "Though I'll warn you, folks in town aren't going to be happy about this when they find out." "We'll be long gone before they find out," Elias said. He paid Walter, shook his hand, and led Lin May back outside. The sun was fully up now, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. Red Hollow was starting to wake up. They needed to move. "We'll take the North Road out of town," Elias said. "Less likely to run into anyone that way." They walked quickly, not quite running, but not strolling either. Lin May kept expecting someone to stop them, to demand to know where they were going, to somehow prevent what was already done. But the streets remained quiet. They were almost to the edge of town when a voice called out, "Well, well, leaving so soon?" Lin May's heart sank. She knew that voice. Margaret Ashford stood in front of the general store, already dressed for the day in a dove-gray dress that probably cost more than Lin May made in a year. Sarah Whitmore was with her, carrying a basket of early morning purchases. "We're just passing through," Elias said calmly. "Together? How interesting." Margaret's eyes moved from Elias to Lin May, taking in the bags, the early hour, the way they were clearly traveling together. "Lin May, dear, are you going somewhere?" "Yes," Lin May said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "With Mr. Boone? How unusual." Does Elizabeth know you're leaving? I've paid through the end of the month. What I do with my time is my business. Margaret's smile was sharp. Is it? Because it looks to me like you're running off with a man you barely know. That's not very respectable, is it? Good thing I'm not running off with him then, Lin Mei said. I'm traveling with my husband. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Margaret's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, and finally, fury. You're what? My husband. We were married this morning by Walter Price. It's all legal. Sarah's mouth had fallen open. You married her? Elias Boone, have you lost your mind? Seems pretty found to me, Elias said mildly. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a long walk ahead. You can't do this, Margaret said, but her voice had lost its usual authority. This isn't what? Acceptable? Respectable? Lin Mei felt something fierce rising in her chest. You spent yesterday telling me I didn't belong in this town. Well, congratulations. You got your wish. I'm leaving. This is insane. You've known him for less than a day. And I've known you my whole life, and you've never been anything but cruel. So yeah, I'll take my chances with him. Margaret's face was turning red. When people find out about this, they'll gossip for a week and then move on to the next scandal, Elias interrupted. That's how small towns work. In a month, nobody will remember or care. I'll make sure they remember. No, you won't. Because making a big deal out of this just proves that Lin Mei got under your skin. And you care way too much about your reputation to let anyone think some poor seamstress bothered you that much. He adjusted his pack. We're leaving now. You can waste your energy being angry, or you can go back to whatever it is you do all day. Either way, it doesn't affect us. He started walking. Lin Mei followed, her heart pounding, but her steps steady. This is a mistake, Margaret called after them. You'll regret this, Lin Mei Carter. It's Lin Mei Boone now, Lin Mei said without turning around. And the only thing I regret is not leaving sooner. They walked out of Red Hollow as the town began its daily routine, leaving behind the only life Lin Mei had ever known. She didn't look back. There was nothing behind her worth seeing. The mountain road stretched ahead, rough and uncertain. Elias set a steady pace, his long legs eating up the distance. Lin Mei had to work to keep up, but she managed. After an hour of walking in silence, Elias glanced at her. You holding up okay? I'm fine. We can rest if you need to. I said I'm fine. She paused. Thank you, though, for asking. He nodded and kept walking. Another hour passed. The landscape was changing, becoming less settled, more wild. Trees grew thicker. The road became more of a trail. Lin Mei had never been this far from town before. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Sure. Back there with Margaret. You said you weren't worried about what people would think, but doesn't it bother you? What they'll say about you marrying someone like me? Elias stopped walking and turned to face her. Someone like you? You mean someone strong enough to survive on her own from age 12? Someone skilled enough to build a business with no help? Someone brave enough to take a risk on an unknown future rather than accept slow death in the place she knew? He shook his head. No, Lin Mei, it doesn't bother me at all. If anything, I'm worried about what people will say about you marrying someone like me. What do you mean? I mean, I'm a rough mountain trapper who lives alone and doesn't play by society's rules. You could have waited, found someone respectable in town, someone with money and status. No, I couldn't have. You know I couldn't have. Maybe, but you still took a hell of a risk on me. I want you to know I don't take that lightly. They stood there on the trail, the morning sun filtering through the trees, and something passed between them. Not love. It was too soon for that. But understanding, maybe. Recognition. We should keep moving, Elias said finally. We need to cover good ground before it gets too hot. They walked until midday when Elias called for a rest by a small stream. He pulled out dried meat and hardtack from his pack, handing half to Lin Mei. Not fancy, he said, but it'll keep you going. Lin Mei ate, grateful for anything. The walking had awakened a hunger she'd been suppressing for weeks. After they ate, Elias showed her how to refill their water canteens from the stream, using a cloth to filter out sediment. First rule of mountain life, he said. Clean water is everything. You can survive a lot of things, but not bad water. How much farther to your cabin? 2 more days if we keep this pace. There's a spot about 4 hours ahead where we can camp tonight. It's got shelter and a fire pit I've used before. And after that? 1 more full day of walking. We should reach the cabin by tomorrow evening if the weather holds. Lin Mei looked up at the sky. It was clear blue, no hint of clouds. Does the weather change fast up here? It can. That's why we're moving quick. He stood up, offering her a hand. Ready? She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. His grip was strong, calloused, warm. He released her hand immediately, shouldering his pack. They walked through the afternoon, the trail growing steeper as they climbed into the foothills. Lin Mei's legs burned and her shoulders ached from her bags, but she didn't complain. Elias had said mountain life was hard. This was just the beginning. As the sun started to lower, they reached the campsite Elias had mentioned. It was a small clearing with a natural overhang of rock that provided shelter from the elements. Someone, probably Elias on previous trips, had built a fire ring from stones. "We'll stay here tonight," he said, dropping his pack. "I'll gather firewood. You can set up your bedroll under the overhang." "I don't have a bedroll." Elias looked at her, then at her 2 small bags. "What do you have?" "Clothes, sewing supplies, my mother's things." "No blanket? No sleeping gear?" "I didn't think—" Lin Mei felt stupid. Of course she should have thought about what she'd need for traveling, but she'd been so focused on just making the decision to leave that she hadn't considered the practical details. "It's fine," Elias said. "We'll share my bedroll tonight. It's big enough for 2. "Oh, okay. I'll sleep on one side, you'll sleep on the other. There's a dividing line down the middle. Don't cross it unless you're freezing, in which case cross it, because hypothermia is worse than awkwardness." Despite everything, Lin Mei almost smiled. "Understood." While Elias gathered firewood, Lin Mei explored the campsite. It really was a good spot, protected, with the stream nearby, and flat enough to sleep comfortably. She could see why he'd used it before. Elias built the fire with practiced efficiency, getting it going in minutes. As darkness fell and the temperature dropped, the warmth was welcome. They ate more dried meat and hardtack, supplemented with some wild onions Elias had spotted and dug up near the stream. It wasn't much, but it was more than Lin Mei had eaten in days. "Tomorrow we'll have fresh meat," Elias said, watching the fire. "There's good hunting about halfway to the cabin. I'll catch us a rabbit or 2. You make it sound easy." "It is, once you know what you're doing. I'll teach you if you want." "Teach me to hunt?" "Why not? You'll need to know how to get food if something happens to me. Mountain life doesn't leave room for helplessness." Lin Mei thought about that. In Red Hollow, women weren't supposed to hunt. It was men's work. But out here, apparently, survival mattered more than propriety. "I'd like to learn," she said. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire crackle. The night sounds of the forest surrounded them. Insects, birds, small animals moving through the underbrush. It should have been frightening, but somehow it wasn't. "You did good today," Elias said eventually. "Walking all day without complaint, keeping up. A lot of people couldn't handle it." "I'm tougher than I look. I know." He poked the fire with a stick. "Back in town, when Margaret was going after you, I saw something in the way you stood there. Most people would have either fought back or run away. You did neither. You just took it, but not because you were weak, because you were choosing not to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. It felt like weakness. It wasn't. It was strategy. You knew fighting back would make things worse, so you endured. That takes strength. Different kind of strength than swinging fists, but strength all the same." Lin Mei looked at him across the fire. His face was half in shadow, his expression thoughtful. "Why do you notice things like that?" "Because I've been there. Different circumstances, same feeling. When you're powerless, you learn to survive in ways that don't look like surviving. You learn to endure. When were you powerless?" Elias was quiet for a long time. Lin Mei thought he might not answer. Then, "I grew up in a coal town back east. Father died in a mine collapse when I was 6. Mother tried to keep us fed, but there were 4 kids and no money. She ended up marrying a man who had work but didn't like kids much, especially not kids that weren't his. He hurt you. When he was drunk, which was most of the time. Beat all of us, but I was the oldest, so I took the worst of it." His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was talking about weather. "I left when I was 14. Just walked away one day and never looked back." "How did you survive?" "Worked whatever jobs I could get. Learned to hunt, trap, live rough. Made my way west because everyone said there was opportunity out here for people willing to work hard. Found the mountains and realized I'd rather live alone with nature than surrounded by people who'd kick you when you were down. Do you ever regret leaving? No, best decision I ever made. He looked at her. Same way leaving Red Hollow is probably the best decision you'll ever make. You sound pretty certain. I am. Because I know what happens to people who stay in places that destroy them. They break, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of who they were. You were already breaking, Lin May. I could see it. Another year in that town and you'd have been gone, one way or another. The words should have hurt, but they didn't. They were true, and the truth was almost a relief. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing that, for pulling me out. You pulled yourself out. I just offered transportation. They stayed up a while longer, talking in fits and starts about nothing important. Eventually, Elias banked the fire and spread out the bedroll under the rock overhang. It was a large piece of oiled canvas with blankets sewn inside. Clever design that kept you dry and warm. You take the inside, closer to the rock, he said. I'll sleep on the outside. Lin May climbed into the bedroll, and Elias got in on the other side. There was definitely a dividing line. He stayed rigidly on his side, giving her as much space as possible. Good night, he said. Good night. Lin May lay there in the darkness, listening to the forest, feeling the warmth from Elias's body across the divide, and thought about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday at this time, she'd been standing in Red Hollow's square, being torn apart by women who'd never known a hungry day in their lives. Now she was married, lying next to a mountain man she barely knew, heading toward a life she couldn't picture. It was terrifying. It was also the freest she'd felt in years. Sleep came easier than she expected, and her last thought before drifting off was simple. Whatever happened next, at least it would be her choice. Lin May woke to the smell of cooking meat and the sound of fat sizzling over fire. For a confused moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The hard ground beneath her, the rough canvas of the bedroll, the open sky visible beyond the rock overhang. None of it made sense. Then memory rushed back. Red Hollow, the marriage, the walk into the mountains, Elias. She sat up, her body stiff and sore from yesterday's walking. Elias was crouched by the fire, turning 2 rabbits on makeshift spits. He looked over when he heard her move. Morning. Sleep all right? Better than I expected. Lin May climbed out of the bedroll, trying to work the kinks out of her shoulders. When did you catch those? About an hour ago. You were sleeping hard, so I let you rest. He pulled one of the rabbits off the fire, testing it with his knife. This one's done. You want it? They ate breakfast sitting on rocks near the fire. The rabbit was gamey and tough, nothing like the carefully prepared meals Lin May remembered from when her mother was alive. But it was hot and filling, and she was hungry enough not to care. We'll make good time today, Elias said, gnawing meat off a small bone. The trail gets rougher, but it's mostly downhill until we hit the valley. Then it's flat for a few miles before the final climb to the cabin. How often do you make this trip? 3, maybe 4 times a year. More in summer when the trading's good, less in winter when the snow makes it nearly impossible. He tossed the bone into the fire. Once we're settled, I probably won't come back to Red Hollow at all. There are other trading posts closer to the cabin. Better people, too. No love lost for that town? None. I only went there because it was convenient. Now that I've got you, I don't need their convenience anymore. The casual way he said, now that I've got you, should have bothered Lin May. But it didn't. It wasn't possessive, it was practical. She was part of his life now, a permanent fixture in his plans. They packed up camp quickly. Elias scattered the fire, buried the ashes, and removed all traces of their presence with an efficiency that spoke of long practice. Lin May watched, learning. This was her life now. She needed to know how to do these things. The second day of walking was harder than the first. Her legs were already sore from yesterday, and the trail was steeper, rockier, more demanding. Elias set a relentless pace, and Lin May struggled to keep up. You need to rest? He asked around midday, noticing her lagging. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. I'm fine. Your pride's going to get you hurt. I said I'm fine. Elias stopped walking and turned to face her. Look, there's a difference between pushing through discomfort and damaging yourself. If you need a break, take a break. We're not racing anyone. I don't want to slow you down. You're not slowing me down. This is the pace we're going at together. If I wanted to go faster, I'd have left you behind. He gestured to a fallen log nearby. Sit. Drink some water. Give your legs 5 minutes. Lin Mei wanted to argue, but her legs were screaming and her pride wasn't worth an injury. She sat. Elias sat next to her. Not too close, but not distant either. He pulled out the water canteen and handed it to her. You're doing better than most would. I've seen grown men cry on this trail. Really? No, but I'm trying to make you feel better about struggling. Despite everything, Lin Mei laughed. It came out rusty, like her throat had forgotten how to make the sound. You're terrible at comforting people. I know. It's not really my skill set. He took the canteen back, drank, and wiped his mouth. But I meant what I said. You're doing well. Most people couldn't have walked all day yesterday and then started again this morning without complaining. I'm complaining on the inside. That's fine, long as you keep moving on the outside. They rested for a few more minutes, then continued. The afternoon was a blur of placing one foot in front of the other, watching the ground to avoid loose rocks, focusing on Elias's back as he moved steadily ahead. Lin Mei's mind went blank, settling into the rhythm of walking. Left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. When Elias finally called a halt for the day, Lin Mei nearly collapsed. They'd reached another campsite, this one less sheltered than the previous nights, but with a clear view of the valley below. In the distance, mountains rose like jagged teeth against the darkening sky. That's where we're headed, Elias said, pointing. See that ridgeline? The cabin's just below it, tucked into the trees where it's protected from the worst weather. Lin Mei looked but couldn't make out any details. It was all just wilderness to her. Endless trees and rocks and emptiness. How much farther? We'll be there tomorrow evening. This is the last night on the trail. The relief was overwhelming. One more night of sleeping on hard ground, one more day of walking, and then what? A cabin she'd never seen, a life she couldn't imagine, a future that was completely uncertain. Elias built another fire and prepared another simple meal. They ate in silence, too tired for conversation. As darkness fell, Lin Mei felt the temperature drop sharply. She pulled her thin shawl tighter, but it didn't help much. Cold? Elias asked. A little. He disappeared into his pack and came back with a thick wool blanket. Here. It's going to get colder the higher we go. Might as well get used to layering. Lin Mei wrapped the blanket around herself, grateful for the warmth. Don't you need it? I've got enough. He settled by the fire, his own blanket draped over his shoulders. Besides, you're not used to mountain cold yet. Give it a few weeks, your body will adjust. They sat watching the fire for a while. Above them, stars were appearing in impossible numbers. Lin Mei had never seen so many stars. In Red Hollow, there were always lamps and buildings blocking the view. Out here, the sky was vast and overwhelming. It's beautiful, she said quietly. It is. One of the reasons I stay up here. Elias tilted his head back, looking up. No people, no noise, no politics, just the world as it's supposed to be. Don't you ever get lonely? Sometimes. But there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is choosing to be alone because it's better than the alternative. He glanced at her, though I guess I'm not choosing solitude anymore. Having second thoughts? No, you. Lin Mei considered. Was she having second thoughts? Everything about this situation was insane. She'd married a stranger, left everything she knew, and was heading into a wilderness that could kill her if she made the wrong mistake. Any rational person would be terrified. But she wasn't terrified. Nervous, yes. Uncertain, absolutely. But not terrified. No second thoughts, she said. Just first thoughts that won't shut up. Elias smiled, a rare expression that changed his whole face. That's fair. This is a lot to process. Can I ask you something? Sure. What happens when we get to the cabin? What's the routine? Elias poked at the fire with a stick. Routine depends on the season. Right now we're heading into late fall. That means preparing for winter. We'll need to stock up on firewood, make sure the cabin's weatherproofed, lay in food supplies, check the traps and hunting areas. It's a lot of work, but it needs to be done before the first big snow. And in winter? In winter, we mostly survive. Keep the fire going, keep ourselves fed, maintain the cabin. It's harder because you can't get out much when the snow's deep. but it's also peaceful. Nothing to do but wait for spring. That sounds boring. It can be. But it's also when you learn if you can stand being around someone for weeks at a time with no escape. He looked at her directly. That's going to be the real test, Lin May. Not the walking or the work. The being stuck together with nowhere to go and nothing to distract you. What if we can't stand each other? Then spring will be real awkward. He said it lightly, but there was truth underneath. But I don't think that's going to happen. Why not? Because you're not the type to give up easily, and neither am I. We'll figure it out. Lin May hoped he was right. That night, sharing the bedroll felt less strange. They settled on their respective sides, maintaining the invisible barrier, but Lin May was conscious of his warmth, his steady breathing, the solid presence of him. It was oddly comforting. Elias? Yeah? Thank you for all of this. Thank me when we've survived a winter together. She fell asleep listening to the night sounds of the forest and woke to gray dawn light and the smell of pine smoke. Her third day of walking began the same as the previous two. Sore muscles, simple breakfast, packing up camp. But today felt different. Today they would reach the cabin. The morning passed in a haze of effort. The trail climbed higher, the air thinning, the trees changing from broadleaf to evergreen. Lin May's lungs burned and her legs felt like they might give out, but she kept moving. Elias was right there, matching her pace, occasionally offering a hand over rough spots. Around midday, they stopped at a small stream for water. Lin May splashed her face, the cold shocking her fully awake. How much farther? She asked. Few more hours. We'll reach the ridge soon, then it's just the descent to the cabin. Elias refilled the canteens. You holding up? Barely. Good. Honest is better than brave. They pushed on. The trail grew steeper, narrower, more challenging. Lin May focused on each step, each breath, refusing to think about how much farther they had to go. And then, suddenly, they crested a rise and Elias stopped. There, he said, pointing. Lin May looked where he indicated. Below them, nestled in a small clearing surrounded by tall pines, sat a log cabin. It was smaller than she'd imagined, but solid-looking, with a stone chimney and a covered porch. Smoke rose from the chimney. No, wait, that couldn't be right. Why is there smoke? She asked. Elias's expression went hard. There shouldn't be. He moved faster now, his hand going to the knife at his belt. Lin May hurried to keep up, her exhaustion forgotten in a spike of fear. Someone was in the cabin, someone who shouldn't be there. They approached cautiously. As they got closer, Lin May could see that the door was slightly ajar. Elias gestured for her to stay back, then pushed the door open with his boot. A man sat by the fire inside, warming his hands. He looked up when they entered, showing no surprise. About time you showed up, he said. Been waiting 2 days. Elias relaxed slightly, but he didn't smile. Marcus, what are you doing here? The man, Marcus, was younger than Elias, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and a scar running through one eyebrow. He dressed like a trapper, all buckskin and fur, and he looked at Lin May with undisguised curiosity. Heard you got married, Marcus said. Wanted to see if it was true. News travels fast. You married Margaret Ashford's favorite target in front of half of Red Hollow and didn't expect word to spread? Marcus stood up, grinning. Man, I'd have paid to see that. They say she nearly had a fit right there in the street. They exaggerate. Do they? Because the version I heard had you basically telling the entire town elite to go to hell. Marcus looked at Lin May again. You must be something special to get Elias Boone to come down from his mountain and pick a fight with civilization. Marcus, meet my wife, Lin May. Lin May, this is Marcus Webb. He traps about 10 miles west of here. He's also a pain in my ass. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Boone. Marcus gave a little mock bow. Sorry for intruding, but I had to make sure the rumors were true. Elias Boone, confirmed bachelor and hater of society, married to a woman he'd known for all of 5 minutes. It's like hearing that bears started writing poetry. How did you even find out? Elias dropped his pack by the door. Ran into Tom Fletcher yesterday. He'd just come from Red Hollow, said the whole town was buzzing about it. Apparently Margaret Ashford has declared you public enemy number 1. She'll get over it. I don't know. Tom said she was threatening to have the marriage annulled, claiming you coerced the poor girl or some nonsense. Elias's jaw tightened. She can't do that. Probably not, but she can make noise about it. You know how these things work. Doesn't matter if it's true, just matters if enough people believe it. Marcus looked at Lin Mei. Did he coerce you? No, Lin Mei said firmly. I married him willingly. There you go. Case closed. Marcus clapped his hands together. Well, now that I've confirmed you've both lost your minds, I'll get out of your way. Just wanted to make sure everything was all right up here. Appreciate it, Elias said, and he actually sounded sincere. You see anything else while you were waiting? Tracks near the North Ridge. Bear, probably. Big one, from the size of the prince. Might want to check your traps before it gets into them. I will. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. Seriously, though, congratulations. Both of you. What you're doing here, he gestured vaguely at the cabin, at them, at everything. It's brave. Probably crazy, but brave. I hope it works out. Thanks, Marcus. After he left, silence filled the cabin. Lin Mei looked around, taking it in properly for the first time. It was one large room with a sleeping loft above, reached by a ladder. The main floor had a fireplace, a table with 2 chairs, shelves along one wall, a few trunks, and a surprisingly well-organized cooking area. Everything was rough but functional, built to last. Home, Elias said, watching her. What do you think? It's smaller than I imagined. Too small? No, just different. Lin Mei walked to the fireplace, holding her hands out to the warmth. Marcus had kept the fire going well. The cabin was actually comfortable. Where will I sleep? Loft. I usually sleep down here by the fire, but we can switch if you want, or... He hesitated. We can share the loft. It's bigger than the bedroll. More space between us. I'll take the loft. Fair enough. Elias started unpacking his gear with practiced efficiency. We'll need to inventory supplies, see what we're short on. Tomorrow I'll check the traps and hunt. You can familiarize yourself with the cabin, figure out where everything is. What about tonight? Tonight we rest. You've been walking for 3 days. Your body needs recovery time. Lin Mei wanted to argue to prove she could handle more, but the truth was she was exhausted. Her legs were shaking, her shoulders ached from carrying her bags, and now that she'd stopped moving, tiredness hit her like a physical weight. Okay, she said. Elias looked surprised. Okay? Just like that? I'm learning to pick my battles. Smart woman. He showed her around the cabin, explaining where supplies were kept, how the water system worked. There was a pump connected to an underground spring, and the basic layout. It was all surprisingly well organized. Elias might live alone, but he wasn't slovenly about it. The loft has a proper bed, he said, gesturing to the ladder. Not fancy, but better than the ground. There's extra blankets in the trunk up there. Help yourself. Lin Mei climbed the ladder and found herself in a low-ceilinged space that ran the length of the cabin. A simple bed frame held a cornhusk mattress and several thick blankets. A small window looked out over the clearing. It was basic, but it was hers. She climbed back down to find Elias preparing food. Actual food, not just dried meat and hardtack. He'd pulled out potatoes, onions, and what looked like preserved venison. You can cook? She asked. I cannot starve. There's a difference. He glanced at her. You know how to make stew? Yes. Good. Because my version is basically throw everything in a pot and hope for the best. Lin Mei found herself smiling. Move over. I'll do it. Working together at the small kitchen area felt strange and natural at the same time. Elias had the supplies. Lin Mei had the skill. She directed him to cut vegetables while she prepared the meat and seasoned the pot. It was the first time she'd cooked a real meal in weeks, and despite the unfamiliar setting, her hands remembered the motions. My mother taught me to cook, she said as she worked. She said a woman who could feed herself would never starve, and a woman who could feed others would never be unwanted. Smart woman. She was. She just didn't account for the fact that in places like Red Hollow, being useful doesn't matter if you're the wrong kind of person. Well, you're in the right place now. Up here, useful is the only thing that matters. The stew came together slowly, filling the cabin with rich smells. Elias set the table, 2 bowls, 2 spoons, 2 cups, and they sat down to eat as darkness fell outside. The stew was good, better than good. Lin Mei had made it with limited supplies and an unfamiliar stove, but it tasted like home, like her mother's kitchen, like the life she'd thought she'd lost forever. This is excellent, Elias said around a mouthful. Seriously, this is the best thing I've eaten in months. It's just stew. It's just stew that doesn't taste like boot leather and regret. Trust me, that's an accomplishment. They ate in comfortable silence. Outside night sounds began. Owls, wind in the trees, the distant call of some animal Lin Mei couldn't identify. It should have been frightening, but inside the cabin, with firelight and food and solid walls, she felt safer than she had in years. "What happens now?" she asked when they'd finished eating. Elias leaned back in his chair. "Now we figure out how to live together. Tomorrow, I'll show you the land, the traps, the garden area. You'll start learning what you need to know to survive up here. And we'll work on winterizing the cabin. There's always repairs to be done, supplies to organize, preparations to make. And after winter? After winter, we decide if this arrangement is working. If it is, we keep going. If it's not," he shrugged, "we deal with that then." "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. Not easy, but simple. We work, we survive, we see what happens." He stood up, collecting the bowls. "You must be exhausted. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Lin Mei climbed to the loft, her whole body aching. The bed was surprisingly comfortable. The cornhusk mattress rustled when she lay down, but it supported her weight evenly. She wrapped herself in the thick blankets and listened to Elias moving around below, banking the fire, settling in for the night. She was married. She was in a cabin in the mountains. She was further from Red Hollow than she'd ever been in her life. And she was okay, more than okay. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe, possibly, she might actually have a future worth living. The next morning, Elias woke her at dawn. "Come on, I want to show you something." Still half asleep, Lin Mei climbed down from the loft and followed him outside. The clearing was bathed in early morning light, and the air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Elias led her to the edge of the clearing where the trees opened up to reveal a view of the valley below. Mountains stretched in every direction, their peaks touched with gold from the rising sun. The world was vast and wild and utterly untouched by human hands. "This is why I live here," Elias said quietly. "This view, this freedom. Nobody can take this from you because nobody owns it. It just exists." Lin Mei stared at the landscape, overwhelmed. In Red Hollow, the world had been small. A few streets, familiar buildings, the same faces every day. This was the opposite. This was endless. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is. And it's yours now. Half of everything, remember? Half of this land, half of this view, half of this life." He looked at her. "You're not a guest here, Lin Mei. You're an owner. Don't forget that." They stood there for a few more minutes. Then Elias started showing her the practical aspects of their land. The garden area where they'd plant in spring, the smokehouse for preserving meat, the root cellar dug into the hillside for storing vegetables, the stream that provided water year-round. "This is a lot," Lin Mei said, slightly overwhelmed. "It is, but you don't have to learn it all today. We've got time." Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Elias taught her how to check the trap lines, how to identify animal tracks, how to tell good firewood from bad. Lin Mei took over the cooking and started organizing the cabin's interior, finding ways to make the space more efficient. It wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration when she couldn't get the fire started properly, or when she got lost following the trap line and Elias had to come find her. There were moments of awkwardness when they bumped into each other in the small cabin, or when the silence stretched too long and neither knew what to say. But there were also moments of unexpected connection, like when Elias brought back a deer and showed her how to butcher it properly, and she realized she wasn't squeamish about blood and bone. Or when she made biscuits from scratch and he ate 4 of them in a row, declaring them better than anything he'd ever bought in town. 2 weeks after their arrival, the first snow fell. Lin Mei woke to find the world transformed, everything covered in white, the sounds muffled, the air sharp and clean. Elias was already up, standing on the porch and looking at the sky. "It's early," he said when she joined him. "Usually doesn't snow this heavy until December. Is that bad?" "Could be. If it keeps up, we might be snowed in sooner than expected." He turned to her. "You ready for that? Being stuck here with just me for company?" Lin Mei thought about Red Hollow, about Margaret Ashford's cruel smile, about the constant hunger and fear and smallness of that life. Then she looked at the cabin behind them, warm, solid, full of food she'd helped prepare. "Yeah," she said, I'm ready. The snow kept falling. Within 3 days, they were snowed in completely. The trail to town buried under drifts that would take weeks to clear. Elias had been right about this being the real test, but as the days passed, Lin May found it wasn't as hard as she'd feared. Yes, they were isolated. Yes, the cabin was small. Yes, there were moments of boredom and restlessness. But there was also a rhythm to it. Morning chores, fire, breakfast, checking supplies. Midday work. Elias maintaining equipment. Lin May sewing and mending. Evening together. Cooking, eating, talking by the fire. They weren't friends exactly, not yet, but they were becoming something. Partners, maybe. People who could coexist without driving each other crazy. One night, about a month into their isolation, they sat by the fire after dinner. Elias was working on a new trap, and Lin May was mending one of his shirts. The seams had split from hard use. "Can I ask you something?" Elias said suddenly. "Sure." "Do you regret it? Marrying me? Coming here? All of it?" Lin May looked up from her sewing. It was the first time he'd asked directly. "No. Do you?" "No. But I worry sometimes that you do and just won't say it." "I don't regret it. It's hard, and it's different, and sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing. But it's better than what I had. Better than what I was heading toward." She tied off a thread. "Why do you ask?" "Because you've been quiet lately. Thought maybe you were having second thoughts." "I'm always quiet." "True. But there's different kinds of quiet. I wanted to make sure." Lin May set down the shirt. "Elias, if I was miserable, I'd tell you. We made an agreement. Honest partnership. That includes being honest about how we're doing." "And how are you doing?" She considered. How was she doing? She was warm, fed, safe. She was learning skills she'd never imagined needing. She was living with a man who treated her with more respect than anyone in Red Hollow ever had. She was building something. "I'm doing okay," she said. "Better than okay, actually. I'm doing well." Elias smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Good. That's good." The winter deepened. Christmas came and went. They marked it with a special meal and small gifts they'd made for each other. Elias gave her a wooden box he'd carved for storing her sewing supplies. Lin May gave him a new shirt she'd made from fabric she'd found in his storage trunk, properly fitted this time, instead of the two big ones he usually wore. January was brutal. The temperatures dropped to levels Lin May had never experienced. The cabin became their entire world. Stepping outside meant immediate pain from the cold. But the cabin held. The fire kept burning. The food supplies stayed adequate. And slowly, imperceptibly, things changed between them. It started with small touches. Elias steadying her when she slipped on ice. Lin May brushing snow off his shoulders when he came inside. Then longer conversations, sharing stories about their pasts, laughing at stupid jokes. One night in late January, during a particularly fierce storm, the wind howling so loud they could barely hear each other, Lin May came down from the loft because she couldn't sleep. Elias was still awake, feeding the fire. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "The wind's too loud." "Yeah, this is a bad one." He moved over on his bedroll. "You can sit by the fire if you want. Warmer down here anyway." Lin May sat next to him, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside. "You ever wonder if we made the right choice?" Lin May asked. "Every day. Then I remember what the alternative was, and I stopped wondering." "What was your alternative?" "Dying alone up here in about 20 years, probably frozen to death because I got too old to chop enough wood or hunt enough food." He poked at the fire. "Not a great ending." "And now?" "Now I've got someone who'll either keep me alive or will inherit a decent piece of land when I go. Either way, it's better." "That's dark." "That's practical." He looked at her. "What was your alternative? Probably ending up at the saloon? Or married to someone who'd beat me? Or just dead in a ditch somewhere after Elizabeth finally kicked me out and I couldn't find work?" Lin May pulled the blanket tighter. "You saved my life, you know. Even if this doesn't work out long term, you saved my life. You saved mine too, just in a different way." They sat there until the fire burned low and sleep finally found them both. Lin May woke at dawn to find herself leaning against Elias's shoulder, his arm loosely around her to keep her from falling over. Neither of them mentioned it, but something had shifted. February brought a thaw, and with it, restlessness. Elias started talking about checking the far trap lines as soon as the snow melted enough. Lin Mei started planning the spring garden, sketching out where different vegetables would go. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, a routine now, comfortable and practiced, Elias said, "I've been thinking." About? About this arrangement. About us. Lin Mei's hand stilled on the vegetables she was chopping. What about us? It's working, better than I expected. You're handling mountain life better than most people who were born to it. And, he paused, choosing his words carefully, I like having you here. Not just for the practical help, I like you being here. Lin Mei's heart did something complicated in her chest. I like being here too. So I was thinking, maybe we should make this more than just a practical arrangement. Maybe we should try to make it a real marriage. The knife in Lin Mei's hand trembled slightly. What does that mean? It means I'm saying I want to build a real life with you, not just a survival partnership, a life, if you want that too. Lin Mei set down the knife and turned to face him fully. Are you saying you have feelings for me? I'm saying I might. Or I might be developing them. Or they might already be there, and I'm just bad at recognizing them. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his own inability to articulate. I'm not good at this. Words aren't my thing, but I know that when you're not in the cabin, I notice. And when you are, I feel better. And when I think about next winter, the only way I want to spend it is with you here. So whatever that means, that's what I'm feeling. Lin Mei felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever been this honest with her. No flowery words, no grand gestures, just raw, awkward truth. I feel the same way, she said quietly. I didn't expect to, but I do. Elias reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. His palm was rough, calloused, warm. So what do we do about it? I don't know, figure it out as we go? That seems to be our approach to everything. It's worked so far. He pulled her closer, and Lin Mei let him. When he kissed her, it was careful, tentative, nothing like the aggressive demand she'd feared from men. It was asking permission, offering affection, hoping for acceptance. She kissed him back. That night, Lin Mei didn't climb to the loft. They shared Elias's bedroll by the fire, holding each other as the last of winter howled outside. It wasn't perfect. They were both awkward, uncertain, learning each other. But it was real. And real was all either of them had ever wanted. Spring came slowly to the mountains, arriving in fits and starts like it couldn't quite commit to the change. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth and the first brave shoots of green. Lin Mei watched it happen from the cabin porch, a cup of coffee warming her hands, real coffee, traded from Marcus, who'd stopped by a week earlier with supplies and gossip. Elias was out checking the trap lines, something he did most mornings now that the weather allowed. Lin Mei had offered to come with him, but he'd waved her off. Garden won't plant itself, he'd said, and you're better at planning that than I am. He wasn't wrong. Lin Mei had spent the winter sketching garden layouts, planning what to plant where based on the seed stores Elias had, and what she remembered from watching her mother's small vegetable patch years ago. Today was finally warm enough to start preparing the soil. She set down her coffee and walked to the garden area. The ground was still partially frozen, but Elias had shown her how to work it, breaking up the hard-packed earth with a spade, turning it over, letting the sun do its work. It was brutal labor. Within an hour, Lin Mei's hands were blistered and her back ached. But she kept going. This was her garden, her food, her contribution to their survival. Every seed she planted was a small act of defiance against the life she'd left behind, against everyone who'd said she'd amount to nothing. You're going to hurt yourself. Lin Mei jumped. She hadn't heard Elias return. He stood at the edge of the garden, 3 rabbits slung over his shoulder, watching her with concern. I'm fine, she said automatically. Your hands are bleeding. Lin Mei looked down. He was right. The rough wooden handle of the spade had torn open the blisters. It's nothing. It's not nothing. Elias dropped the rabbits and crossed to her, taking her hands gently. His thumbs traced the damaged skin. You need to wrap these before you keep working, otherwise they'll get infected. I need to finish this section. The garden's not going anywhere. Come on. He led her back to the cabin, sat her down, and pulled out the medical supplies. Lin Mei watched as he cleaned her hands with surprising gentleness, wrapped them in clean cloth, and tied off the bandages with practiced efficiency. "Where did you learn to do this?" she asked. "Living alone, you learn fast. Can't exactly run to a doctor when you're 3 days from the nearest town." He finished the second hand. "There, give it a day. Then you can go back to trying to kill yourself with farm work." "I wasn't trying to kill myself." "No, you were trying to prove something. There's a difference, but the end result's the same." He sat back, studying her. "What are you trying to prove, Lin Mei?" "That I belong here. That I can do this. You've been here 4 months? You've survived a winter that breaks grown men. You can hunt, trap, cook, sew, and you're learning to garden. What more proof do you need?" "I don't know. Maybe I'm still trying to prove it to myself." Elias was quiet for a moment. "You know what I see when I look at you?" "What?" "Someone who's stronger than she thinks she is. Someone who survived things that should have broken her and came out tougher for it. Someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone." He stood up, moving to prepare the rabbits. "But if you need to prove it anyway, fine. Just don't destroy yourself doing it." Lin Mei watched him work, skinning the rabbits with quick, efficient movements. They'd fallen into these patterns over the winter. He hunted, she cooked. He maintained the exterior, she managed the interior. He taught her wilderness skills. She taught him that food could taste like more than just fuel. It worked, more than worked. They'd built something together without really trying, something that felt solid and real. "Elias?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for caring about my hands." He glanced back at her, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "You're my wife. Of course I care." The word still sent a little thrill through her. Wife. She was someone's wife, but not in the way she'd feared. Not property, not decoration, not a servant. A partner. An equal. "I love you," she said. The words came out easier than she expected. Elias's hand stilled on the rabbit. He turned fully to face her. "Say that again." "I love you. I know we started this as a practical arrangement, and I know we're still figuring things out, but I love you, and I needed to say it." He crossed the cabin in 3 strides and kissed her hard, his hands framing her face. When he pulled back, his eyes were intense. "I love you too. Have for a while now, just didn't know how to say it." "You just did." "Yeah, I guess I did." He kissed her again, softer this time. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Building a real life together." "Looks like it." "Good, because I can't imagine doing it with anyone else." Over the next few weeks, the garden took shape. Lin Mei's hands healed and toughened, developing calluses that matched Elias's. She planted potatoes, carrots, beans, squash, everything they'd need to supplement the hunting and trapping. Elias built a fence to keep out deer and other animals, cursing the whole time but doing solid work. Marcus stopped by again in early April, this time with his wife Anna, a quiet woman with sharp eyes and capable hands. They stayed for dinner, and Lin Mei felt a small thrill of pride when Anna complimented her cooking. "You've got a good setup here," Anna said, looking around the cabin. "Better than most first-year couples manage." "We've been lucky," Lin Mei said. "Luck has nothing to do with it. You work hard, both of you. I can see it." Anna sipped her coffee. "Marcus told me what happened in Red Hollow, how you got out." Lin Mei tensed slightly. "Did he?" "Don't worry, we're not here to judge. If anything, I'm impressed. Takes guts to walk away from everything you know." Anna set down her cup. "I did something similar, years ago. Left a bad situation in St. Louis, ended up out here. Best decision I ever made. Even though it's hard, especially because it's hard. Easy things don't mean anything. Hard things you choose for yourself, those matter." After Marcus and Anna left, Elias and Lin Mei sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and purple. "Anna's right," Elias said. "This does matter, what we're building here." "I know. And I want to keep building it. Not just the cabin and the garden. I mean us. Our life. Maybe even..." He hesitated. "Maybe even what?" "Maybe even a family. Someday. If you wanted that." Lin Mei's breath caught. She hadn't let herself think about children. It seemed too presumptuous, too far ahead, too much to hope for. "I want that," she said quietly. "Not right away. But someday, yes. Elias pulled her closer, and they sat there until the stars came out, planning a future that felt real and possible in theirs. Summer arrived with heat that made the cabin feel like an oven. Lin May and Elias started sleeping outside on particularly hot nights, their bedrolls laid out under the stars. The garden exploded with growth, and Lin May spent hours weeding, watering, tending. The first vegetables were ready by late June, radishes and lettuce, small triumphs that tasted like victory. But summer also brought challenges. A drought in July meant hauling extra water from the stream. A bout of illness in August laid Elias low for a week, leaving Lin May to manage everything alone. She did it, hunting, trapping, cooking, maintaining, but it scared her how close they were to disaster if something serious happened. "We need a backup plan," she said when Elias recovered. "What if you'd been hurt instead of just sick? What if something happens to both of us? What kind of backup plan?" "I don't know. More supplies? Medical training? Another cabin we could shelter in?" Elias considered. "There's a trading post about 2 days east, run by a man named Henry Cooper. He's got connections to actual doctors, medical supplies, all of that. We could establish a relationship there, make sure we've got resources if we need them." "Can we afford it?" "We can if your sewing is as good as I think it is." He pulled out a bundle of furs from storage. "These are prime pelts. Worth good money. But you know what's worth more? Fur clothes that actually fit properly. Gloves that don't fall apart. Bags that can handle weight without splitting." Lin May saw where he was going. "You want me to make things to trade. I want us to have a business. I provide the raw materials, you turn them into finished goods. We trade them for supplies, money, connections. Build ourselves some security." It made sense. More than that, it excited her. Lin May had always been good with her hands, good at seeing how things could fit together better. The idea of creating something valuable, something people would seek out specifically, appealed to something deep in her. "I'll need better tools," she said. "Proper shears, good needles, maybe a leather punch. Make me a list. We'll trade for them." Over the next month, Lin May threw herself into learning leatherwork. Elias taught her the basics, but she quickly surpassed him, developing techniques and innovations he'd never considered. By September, she'd produced 3 pairs of gloves, 2 fur-lined coats, and a set of saddlebags that were so well made Elias refused to trade them. "These are too good," he said, examining the stitching. "We're keeping these." "They were supposed to be for trade." "Make more for trade. These are ours." They made the trip to Henry Cooper's trading post in late September as the weather started to cool. It was Lin May's first time leaving the cabin area since they'd arrived, and she was surprised by how nervous she felt. The mountains had become her world. Going beyond them felt strange. The trading post was bigger than she expected, a main building with attached living quarters, plus several outbuildings for storage and animals. Henry Cooper was a bear of a man, even bigger than Elias, with a full beard and a laugh that could shake rafters. "Elias Boone! Been over a year since I've seen you." He clasped Elias's hand in both of his. "Heard you got married. Is this the famous wife?" "This is Lin May. Lin May, Henry Cooper." "Pleasure, ma'am. Your husband's been buying from me for 5 years, and in that time I've never once convinced him to upgrade his coffee situation. Maybe you'll have better luck." Lin May liked him immediately. "What's wrong with his coffee situation?" "He buys the cheapest beans available and then wonders why it tastes like dirt." Henry gestured them inside. "Come on, let's see what you've got to trade." They spread out their goods on Henry's counter. The furs were good. Elias knew quality when he trapped it. But it was Lin May's work that made Henry's eyebrows rise. "These are exceptional," he said, examining one of the coats. "This stitching, this design, where did you learn this?" "Taught myself mostly. Some from my mother, some from watching others, a lot from trial and error." "Well, your errors must be minimal because this is master-level work." Henry looked at Elias. "You know what you've got here? A talented wife? A gold mine. There are people who'd pay premium prices for quality like this. Rich folks from back east who want authentic frontier gear but made properly. I could sell everything you make." Lin May felt her heart race. "Really? Really? How fast can you produce?" "Depends on the item. A coat takes about a week. Gloves, maybe 2 days. Bags varies." Henry did quick calculations in his head. "If you could provide me with, say, 6 items a month, Mix of coats, gloves, bags. I could move them easily. Pay you wholesale prices, which at your quality level would be substantial. Elias and Lin Mei exchanged glances. 6 items a month was doable, especially during winter when hunting was lighter and time was more available. We can do that, Lin Mei said. Excellent. Let's start with these items here. I'll give you store credit. You can pick out supplies now, or save it for later. Henry pulled out a ledger. Now, about that coffee situation. They left the trading post with better coffee, improved medical supplies, quality tools for Lin Mei's work, and a business arrangement that could change everything. On the walk back, Elias kept grinning. What? Lin Mei finally asked. You're amazing, you know that. I made some gloves and coats. You built us a business in less than a year, a real business that could support us even if the trapping went bad. He pulled her close. I knew you were strong. I didn't know you were brilliant, too. I'm not brilliant, I just know how to sew. You know how to survive, how to adapt, how to turn skills into value. He kissed her forehead. You're brilliant, whether you admit it or not. That winter was different from the first. They had better supplies, more food, Lin Mei's business to keep them occupied. But there was also an ease between them that hadn't existed before. They knew each other now, knew each other's moods, preferences, limits. They fought occasionally, usually about stupid things like how much firewood was enough or whether the stew needed more salt. But they also laughed more, touched more, built plans together. In February, Lin Mei realized her monthly bleeding hadn't come. She waited another week before saying anything, not wanting to get Elias's hopes up if she was wrong. But when the second week passed with no sign, she had to tell him. I think I might be pregnant, she said one evening as they prepared dinner. Elias's knife clattered to the cutting board. You think or you know? I think. It's early, but all the signs are there. He crossed to her, his hands finding her waist. How do you feel about it? Scared, excited, terrified, happy, all of it at once. Me too. He rested his forehead against hers. We can do this, right? Raise a child up here? People have done it before. Anna and Marcus have 2 kids. True. And we're more prepared than most. He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. But if you're worried, we could move closer to town, find somewhere with more people, more help. No. I don't want that. I want our child to grow up here, where life is honest and hard but fair, where worth is measured by what you contribute, not who your family is. Lin Mei placed her hand over her stomach. I want better for our baby than what I had. Then that's what we'll do. We'll build something even stronger, something that lasts. The pregnancy was confirmed by a traveling doctor who passed through Henry's trading post in March. Lin Mei was 3 months along, healthy, expected to deliver in late summer. The news made everything real in a way that scared and thrilled her in equal measure. Elias threw himself into preparations. He expanded the cabin, adding a small room off the main space that could serve as a nursery. He stockpiled medical supplies, consulted with every parent he could find about what they'd need. He even made a cradle, carving it from pine and sanding it smooth so no splinters could harm delicate skin. Lin Mei continued her sewing business as long as she could, but the pregnancy exhausted her more than she'd expected. By July, she had to stop taking orders. Henry understood, told them the work would be waiting when she was ready. The baby came in late August during a thunderstorm that shook the cabin. The labor was long and brutal, and there were moments when Lin Mei thought she might die. But Anna was there. She'd come a week early to help, bringing experience and calm competence. And Elias was there, holding Lin Mei's hand, letting her squeeze until his bones creaked, refusing to leave even when Anna suggested it. Their daughter was born just before dawn, tiny and red, and screaming her outrage at the world. Elias cried when he held her, this mountain man who'd seemed incapable of tears. Lin Mei watched through exhausted eyes as he cradled their child like she was made of glass. What do we name her? He asked. Lin Mei had been thinking about this for months. Hope. I want to name her Hope. Hope Boone. Elias tested the name. I like it. It's good. It's what she represents. Hope for a better future. Hope that we can build something lasting. Hope that the world can be different than what we knew. Hope it is. The first year with Hope was the hardest thing either of them had ever done. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, the fear that they were doing everything wrong. But it was also filled with moments of pure joy. Hope's first smile, her first laugh, the way she'd grab onto Elias's finger with her whole tiny hand. Lin May returned to her sewing work when Hope was 6 months old, working during naps and after bedtime. It was exhausting, but she loved it. Creating beautiful things with her hands while her daughter slept nearby felt like building two futures at once. Marcus and Anna became regular visitors, their own children playing with Hope as she grew. A few other trapper families in the area started stopping by, drawn by Lin May's reputation for quality work and fair dealing. The cabin became a hub of sorts, a place where isolated mountain families could connect and trade. By Hope's second birthday, Lin May's business had grown beyond what she could handle alone. Elias had built her a separate workshop, and she'd started teaching interested women in the area her techniques. It wasn't a formal school, just knowledge shared freely, but it meant that quality goods were coming out of their little corner of the mountains. "You're building a legacy," Elias said one evening, watching her work. "I'm just making gloves. You're teaching people skills that'll feed their families. You're creating value where there wasn't any before. You're showing people, women especially, that they can build businesses, support themselves, be independent." He gestured to the workshop. "That's bigger than gloves." Lin May looked around at her workspace, the tools, the materials, the half-finished projects. He was right. This was more than just sewing. This was proof that she could take the skills that had barely kept her alive in Red Hollow and turn them into something that mattered. "I want to do more," she said suddenly. "More what?" "More teaching, more building. I want to create opportunities for women like I was. Women with skills but no options. Women trapped in places that don't value them." The idea was taking shape as she spoke. "What if we set up a proper workshop? Bring in women who want to learn, teach them not just sewing but business, trading, self-sufficiency. Give them the tools to build lives on their own terms." Elias listened, his expression thoughtful. "That's ambitious." "Is it too ambitious?" "No. It's exactly ambitious enough." He moved closer. "But it'd be a lot of work. A lot of money to start. A lot of risk. Everything we've done has been risk. This one just happens to be bigger." "All right, then let's do it. We'll talk to Henry, see what resources we need. Maybe reach out to some of the other families, see who'd be interested." He took her hand. "We built this life from nothing, Lin May. We can build this too." They spent the next year planning. Elias and some of the other men built a larger structure near their cabin, part workshop, part classroom, part gathering space. Lin May developed a curriculum, figuring out how to teach not just techniques, but the business side of craftswork. The first group of students arrived in the spring of Hope's third year. 5 women from various towns and settlements, all looking for a better way to support themselves. Some were widows. Some were escaping bad situations. Some just wanted skills that could give them independence. Lin May taught them everything she knew. Not just sewing and leatherwork, but how to price their goods fairly, how to negotiate with traders, how to build reputations for quality. She taught them that they didn't have to accept scraps, that their work had value, that they could demand respect. By the end of the first session, all 5 women had produced items good enough to trade. More importantly, they'd gained confidence. Lin May saw it in the way they held themselves, the way they spoke about their futures. Word spread. The next year they had 12 students, the year after that, 20. Women came from farther away, staying for weeks or months to learn. Some went back to their towns with new skills. Others stayed in the area, building their own lives in the mountains. The workshop became known throughout the region. Merchants started seeking out goods with Lin May's mark. A small emblem she'd designed taught her students to add to their work. It became a symbol of quality, of work done by women who knew their worth. 4 years after Hope was born, Lin May stood in the workshop watching a class of 15 women practice techniques she'd taught them. Hope played in the corner with Marcus and Anna's youngest daughter, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the serious work happening around them. Elias appeared in the doorway, covered in sawdust from building yet another expansion to the workshop. He watched Lin May teach, pride evident on his face. "You did it," he said when she took a break. "Did what?" "Built something that matters. Changed lives. Created opportunity where there wasn't any." He gestured to the women working. This is bigger than survival now. This is legacy. Lin Mei looked around at what they'd built, the workshop, the community, the future they were creating for Hope, and for all these women who'd come seeking better lives. We did it, she corrected. Together. Yeah, together. That evening, after the students had gone to their lodgings and Hope was asleep, Elias and Lin Mei sat on their porch watching the sunset. It was the same view they'd looked at for years, but everything was different now. You ever think about going back? Elias asked. To Red Hollow, I mean. Just to see it? Lin Mei considered. Sometimes, not to stay, but maybe to show them what I became, what we built. You want to prove them wrong, maybe. Or maybe I just want them to see that their judgment didn't define me, that I built a life worth living despite everything they said I was. Then let's do it. Let's go back. Really? Why not? We've got time before winter. Hope's old enough to travel. And I wouldn't mind seeing Margaret Ashford's face when she realizes the girl she humiliated is doing better than she ever will. Lin Mei laughed. That's petty. I can be petty, especially when it involves people who hurt my wife. They started planning the trip, treating it like the adventure it was. They'd bring Hope, show her where Lin Mei came from, let her see the contrast between that life and the one they'd built. It would be a lesson in its own way, about resilience, about choice, about building your own worth. But more than that, it would be closure. A chance for Lin Mei to face her past, not as a victim, but as a woman who'd triumphed over it. As they sat there planning, Hope's small voice called from inside the cabin. Mama? Papa? They went to her together, this family they'd built from nothing, and Lin Mei felt a satisfaction deeper than anything she'd known in Red Hollow. This was what mattered, not revenge, not proving anything to people who didn't matter. This, her husband, her daughter, her work, her life. Everything else was just noise. They left for Red Hollow on a clear morning in late September. 5 years almost to the day since Lin Mei had walked away from that town with nothing but 2 cloth bags and a desperate hope. Now she rode in a proper wagon, pulled by 2 horses Elias had traded for, with Hope sitting between them chattering about everything she saw. Mama, why are the trees changing colors? Because it's fall, sweetheart. The trees are getting ready for winter. Do they get cold like we do? Elias laughed. Something like that. They're smart trees. They know when to let go of things that won't survive the cold. Lin Mei glanced at him, catching the double meaning. He winked. The journey took 4 days instead of 3 because they weren't pushing hard. Hope needed frequent breaks, and Lin Mei found herself reluctant to rush toward a confrontation she wasn't entirely sure she wanted. But Elias kept them moving forward, steady and certain. On the afternoon of the 4th day, they crested a familiar rise and Red Hollow spread out below them. Lin Mei's breath caught. It looked exactly the same dusty streets, the same buildings, the same church steeple rising above it all. 5 years and nothing had changed, except her. You all right? Elias asked quietly. Yeah, just strange, seeing it again. We can turn around if you want. No, I need to do this. She straightened her shoulders. Let's go. They entered town in the late afternoon when the streets were busy with people finishing their daily business. Lin Mei felt every eye turn toward them as the wagon rolled past. She knew what they saw. A well-dressed woman in a fine coat of her own making, sitting beside a mountain man who looked prosperous and confident with a beautiful child between them. Not the desperate, hungry girl in patches they remembered. Elias drove straight to the boarding house and stopped the wagon. Elizabeth Chen was standing on the porch, her expression frozen somewhere between shock and fury. Mrs. Chen, Elias said pleasantly, tipping his hat. We need rooms for a few nights. You got space? Elizabeth's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Yes, I have space, but excellent. We'll take 2 rooms, one for us, one for our daughter. He climbed down, then helped Lin Mei and Hope down. This is Hope. Hope, say hello to Mrs. Chen. Hope, who'd been taught manners from the moment she could speak, gave a little curtsy. Hello, ma'am. You have a very nice boarding house. Elizabeth looked like she'd been hit with a board. Thank you, child. Yes, come inside. I'll get you settled. Inside, the boarding house was exactly as Lin Mei remembered. The same faded wallpaper, the same creaky floorboards, the same musty smell. But now she was walking through it as a paying guest, not a charity case 3 weeks behind on rent. Elizabeth showed them to 2 adjacent rooms on the second floor. Nice rooms, the kind Lin May had never been able to afford before. "These are $3 a night each," Elizabeth said, her voice tight. "That's fine." Elias pulled out his wallet and counted out bills for a week. "This should cover us. If we need more time, I'll let you know." Elizabeth took the money like it might bite her. "Will you be taking meals here?" "Breakfast and dinner, if that's available." "It is? Breakfast is at 7, dinner at 6. "Perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Chen." After Elizabeth left, Lin May sat on the bed in their room and started to shake. Elias closed the door and sat beside her, pulling her close. "That was harder than I expected," she said. "You did great. Did you see her face?" "I tried not to look." She couldn't believe it. The girl she threw out came back successful. He kissed her temple. "You want to rest before dinner? We don't have to go down if you're not ready." "No, I want to go. I want them all to see." Dinner at the boarding house was served family style in a common dining room. When Lin May walked in with Elias and Hope, the conversation died instantly. Every face turned toward them, some shocked, some curious, some hostile. Margaret Ashford sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court. She'd aged in 5 years, new lines around her mouth and eyes, but her expression was the same mixture of disdain and cruelty Lin May remembered. "Well," Margaret said, her voice carrying across the sudden silence, "look what crawled back. I'm surprised you have the nerve to show your face here." "Mrs. Ashford," Elias said before Lin May could respond, "always a pleasure. I see you haven't changed." "Neither have you, Mr. Boone, still picking up strays." Hope tugged on Lin May's skirt. "Mama, what's a stray?" "Nothing important, sweetheart." Lin May lifted Hope into a chair, then sat beside her. Elias took the seat on her other side, creating a wall of family between Lin May and the rest of the room. Elizabeth served the food with stiff, angry movements. It was basic fare: roast chicken, potatoes, carrots, nothing special. Lin May had cooked better meals 100 times. "So," Margaret said after a few minutes of tense silence, "how long are you planning to stay?" "A few days," Elias said. "We're here on business." "Business? What kind of business?" "I'm looking to establish a trading relationship with some of the merchants here," Lin May said, finding her voice. "My workshop produces high-quality leather goods and fur clothing. I thought Red Hollow might be interested in carrying some of our products." Sarah Whitmore, who sat across the table, let out a dismissive laugh. "Your workshop, please. You can barely sew a straight seam." "That was 5 years ago, Mrs. Whitmore. A lot has changed." "Some things never change. You're still the same desperate girl who built a successful business from nothing," Lin May interrupted. "Who teaches other women to do the same? Who provides employment and opportunity in an area where there wasn't any before?" She kept her voice level, calm. "You're right. I was desperate 5 years ago, but desperation taught me things comfort never could." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "And what exactly did desperation teach you?" "That survival is a skill. That value isn't determined by birth or status or who likes you. That if you work hard enough and refuse to quit, you can build something that matters." Lin May looked directly at Margaret. "That people who think cruelty makes them important are actually just small and scared." The room went dead silent. Margaret's face turned red, then white. "How dare you?" "She's just telling the truth, ma'am," Hope piped up, her child's voice cutting through the tension. "My mama always says truth isn't mean, it's just true." "Are you mad because it's true?" Elias coughed to cover a laugh. Lin May put a hand on Hope's shoulder. "Sweetheart, maybe let the adults talk." "But you said I should always speak up when I see something wrong." "I did say that. You're right." Lin May looked back at Margaret. "My daughter has a point. Is there something wrong with what I said?" Margaret stood up abruptly. "I don't have to sit here and be insulted in my own town." "Actually, this is Elizabeth's boarding house, so technically it's her town," Elias pointed out. "But feel free to leave if you're uncomfortable." Margaret stormed out, Sarah following behind her. The remaining diners sat in awkward silence for a moment, then slowly resumed eating and conversation, though the atmosphere remained tense. After dinner, Lin May tucked Hope into bed in their second room, then returned to find Elias standing at the window of their own room, looking out at the darkening street. That went well, he said dryly. Did it? I just made an enemy of the most powerful woman in town. You already were an enemy. Now you're an enemy she has to respect. He turned to face her. You stood up to her, Lin Mei, not with anger or revenge, just with truth. That's more powerful than anything else you could have done. Lin Mei sat on the bed, exhausted. I don't feel powerful. I feel tired. That's because power is exhausting. Being kind to people who are cruel to you, speaking truth to people who prefer lies, standing firm when you want to run. All of that takes more strength than most people have. He sat beside her. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You'd have found another way. That's who you are. The next morning, Lin Mei set up meetings with several merchants in town. Most were curious, some were skeptical, but when she showed them samples of her work, attitudes changed quickly. The quality spoke for itself. By midday, she'd secured orders from 3 different stores. Not huge orders, but enough to establish relationships. Enough to prove she was a serious businesswoman, not the desperate seamstress they remembered. She was leaving the general store when she encountered Ruth Morrison, the woman who'd helped her that last night before she left Red Hollow. Ruth looked older, grayer, but her eyes were kind as ever. Lin Mei? Is that really you? Hello, Ruth. Ruth pulled her into a hug. Look at you. You look wonderful, healthy, happy. I am both those things. I heard you were back. Heard about the dinner last night, too. Ruth smiled. The whole town's talking about how you put Margaret in her place. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Sometimes trouble finds you whether you mean it to or not. Come, have coffee with me. I want to hear everything. They sat in the small cafe next to the general store, and Lin Mei found herself telling Ruth the whole story. The marriage, the mountain, the business, hope. Ruth listened with genuine interest and warmth. I'm so glad it worked out, Ruth said when Lin Mei finished. I worried about you after you left. Wondered if I'd done the right thing encouraging you to go. You did exactly the right thing. You might have saved my life. You saved your own life. I just pointed toward the door. Ruth sipped her coffee. You know, things have changed here too. Not as dramatically as for you, but changed. Margaret's influence has waned. People got tired of her cruelty, her need to control everything. There are new families in town, people who don't care about her old grievances. And Elizabeth? Still runs the boarding house, still holds grudges. But she's less powerful than she was. The bank changed hands last year, Sarah's husband retired, and the new banker doesn't play favorites. Ruth leaned forward. What I'm saying is, Red Hollow isn't the same town you left. It's still not perfect, but it's better. I'm glad to hear that. I don't want people to suffer the way I did. Some still do. There's always someone at the bottom in places like this. Ruth hesitated. Actually, there's a girl I've been worried about. Chinese family, moved here 2 years ago. The daughter is about 12, and she reminds me so much of you at that age. Smart, talented, but people treat her like she doesn't belong. Lin Mei felt something tighten in her chest. What's her name? Mei Ling. Her father runs a laundry service. They're good people, but they're struggling. Could you introduce me? That afternoon, Ruth brought Lin Mei to meet the Chang family. They lived above their laundry in a cramped apartment that reminded Lin Mei painfully of her own childhood. Mr. and Mrs. Chang were wary at first. Too many people in Red Hollow had proven themselves untrustworthy. But when Ruth explained who Lin Mei was, and Lin Mei spoke to them in the Chinese her mother had taught her, their walls came down. Mei Ling was indeed 12, with clever hands and observant eyes. She watched Lin Mei with a hunger that was heartbreakingly familiar. Your mother tells me you like to sew, Lin Mei said. Mei Ling nodded. I make clothes for my family, and sometimes I fix things for the neighbors. Do you want to do more than that? I want to make beautiful things, things people would pay for, but nobody here will teach me. Lin Mei looked at this girl's parents. I run a workshop in the mountains. I teach women and girls how to turn sewing skills into businesses. If Mei Ling is interested, and if you'd allow it, I'd like to offer her a place in my next class. Mrs. Chang's eyes filled with tears. We couldn't afford. No charge. I take some students on scholarship, girls who show promise but don't have resources. Mei Ling would be one of them. Why would you do this? Mr. Chang asked, suspicious of kindness. Because someone helped me when I needed it, and because I see myself in your daughter. She deserves a chance I didn't get. Lin Mei pulled out a card with her workshop information. Think about it. Talk it over as a family. If you decide yes, send word and I'll arrange everything. Leaving the Chang family, Lin Mei felt something settle in her chest. This was why she'd come back. Not revenge, not vindication, but this. The chance to extend the same opportunity that had saved her life to someone who needed it just as desperately. That evening at dinner, Margaret and Sarah were absent, but Elizabeth was there, serving food with the same tight-lipped disapproval. Halfway through the meal, she approached Lin Mei. I heard you're recruiting students from Red Hollow. News travels fast. It's a small town. People talk. Elizabeth set down a pitcher of water with more force than necessary. I suppose you think you're better than us now, coming back here with your money and your success, showing off. Lin Mei looked up at her former landlady. Is that really what you think I'm doing? What else would you call it? I'd call it living my life. I'd call it building something that matters. I'd call it offering opportunities to people who need them. Lin Mei kept her voice calm. You know what I'm not doing? I'm not humiliating people for wearing patched clothes. I'm not threatening to throw young women onto the street. I'm not making people feel small so I can feel big. Elizabeth's face flushed. I never... Yes, you did. You did exactly that. And so did Margaret and Sarah and half the people in this town. Lin Mei stood up. But I didn't come back here to punish you for it. I came back to show that there's another way. That cruelty doesn't have to win. That people can rise above the circumstances they're born into if someone gives them a chance. She walked out of the dining room, leaving Elizabeth standing there with her mouth open. Elias found her later on the front porch, watching the sun set over the town she'd once called home. You handled that well, he said. Did I? I feel like I'm making speeches at everyone. Sometimes people need to hear speeches, especially when the speeches are true. He leaned against the porch railing. You know what I've noticed this trip? What? You're not scared anymore. Back when we first met, you were terrified. Of them, of judgment, of what might happen if you stepped out of line. Now you speak up without hesitation. You state your truth and let them deal with it. 5 years of not having to be afraid changes a person. It does. And it's beautiful to see. He pulled her close. You ready to go home? Almost. There's one more thing I need to do. The next morning, Lin Mei asked Ruth to arrange a meeting with every young woman in Red Hollow who wanted to learn a trade. They gathered in the church hall, 14 girls and women, ranging from age 12 to mid-20s. Some Lin Mei recognized from 5 years ago, others were new to town. She stood before them, these women who reminded her of herself, and told them her story. Not a sanitized version, but the truth. The hunger, the humiliation, the desperation. The decision to marry a stranger rather than accept slow death. The hard work of building a life from nothing. I'm not telling you this to brag, she said. I'm telling you because I want you to know that where you start doesn't determine where you end up. I was at the bottom, lower than most of you, and I'm not special. I'm just someone who refused to accept that bottom was all I deserved. She explained her workshop, the training she offered, the business skills she taught. She offered scholarships to anyone who couldn't afford the fees. She promised that anyone who completed the training would have real, marketable skills that could support them. You don't have to stay in places that diminish you, she said. You don't have to accept other people's judgments about your worth. You can build your own lives, on your own terms. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is easy, but it's possible. I'm proof of that. By the time she finished, 7 women had signed up for her next class, including Mei Ling. Ruth stood in the back of the hall, tears streaming down her face, mouthing the words, "Thank you." That afternoon, as they prepared to leave Red Hollow, Margaret Ashford approached their wagon. Lin Mei tensed, but Margaret's expression was strange, not quite apologetic, but not hostile either. I wanted to say something before you left, Margaret said. Go ahead. I was wrong about you. 5 years ago, I thought you were nothing, worthless, destined to fail. She looked away. Turns out I was wrong. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest Margaret Ashford had probably ever come to admitting fault. Thank you for saying that, Lin Mei said. It doesn't change the past, but I appreciate the honesty. I also wanted to say what you're doing with the workshop, the training, it's good. My own daughter might benefit from learning real skills instead of just how to manage servants. Margaret's voice was stiff, like the words hurt to say. Would you consider taking her on? Lin Mei studied the woman who'd once torn her apart in a public square. She could say no. She'd be justified in saying no. But that wasn't who she'd become. Send her when she's ready. I'll make sure she learns everything I can teach her. Margaret nodded once, then walked away without another word. Elias loaded the last of their supplies into the wagon. You're a better person than I am. I'd have told her to go to hell. 5 years ago, I would have too. But I've learned that holding on to anger just makes you carry weight you don't need. Lin Mei climbed onto the wagon seat. Besides, her daughter didn't do anything wrong. She deserves a chance like everyone else. They drove out of Red Hollow the same way they'd entered, slowly, deliberately, with every eye in town watching. But this time, Lin Mei didn't look at the ground. She looked straight ahead, toward the mountains rising in the distance, toward the home they'd built together. Hope sat between them, chattering about everything they'd seen, everyone they'd met. She was already planning what she'd teach Mei Ling when the girl came to the workshop, already imagining the friends she'd make. Mama, are we legends now? Hope asked suddenly. What? That lady at the store said you and Papa were legends. What does that mean? Lin Mei and Elias exchanged glances. It means people tell stories about us, Elias said, about how we built our life. Are the stories true? Some of them. Stories always get bigger in the telling. I like our real story better, Hope declared. The true one. Me too, sweetheart. They traveled for 3 days, and with each mile, Lin Mei felt lighter. She'd faced her past, proved nothing to anyone but herself, and extended a hand to those who needed it most. That was enough. More than enough. On the evening of the 3rd day, they crested the familiar ridge and saw their cabin below, smoke rising from the chimney. Marcus and Anna were keeping the place warm for their return. The workshop stood beside it, larger now, with the additions they'd built. Beyond it, the mountains stretched forever, wild and free. Home, Elias said softly. Home, Lin Mei agreed. Over the next few years, the workshop grew into something neither of them had imagined. Women came from hundreds of miles away to learn, to build skills, to find the same freedom Lin Mei had found. Some stayed in the area, building their own cabins and lives. Others took what they'd learned back to their own towns, spreading the knowledge further. Mei Ling arrived the spring after their Red Hollow visit and turned out to have a natural talent that exceeded even Lin Mei's. Within 2 years, she was teaching classes herself, patient and thorough with the younger students. Hope grew up surrounded by women who'd rebuilt their lives, who'd refused to accept the limitations others placed on them. She learned that strength came in many forms, that kindness was a choice, that building something meaningful required both courage and persistence. When Hope turned 10, she asked Lin Mei about her life before the mountains. What was it like, Mama, when you lived in Red Hollow? Lin Mei considered how to answer. She could sanitize it, make it less harsh than it was, but Hope deserved the truth. It was hard. I was hungry a lot, scared most of the time. People were cruel because they could be, and I didn't have the power to stop them. That sounds terrible. It was, but it was also necessary. How was it necessary? Because it taught me what I didn't want. It showed me that staying in a place that destroys you isn't loyalty or bravery. It's just slow death. It forced me to make a choice that terrified me but saved my life. Lin Mei pulled her daughter close. Everything good in my life now came from having the courage to leave what was killing me, even though I didn't know what would come next. Is that why you help other women leave bad places? Yes. Because I know what it costs to leave, and I know what it costs to stay. I want to make leaving easier for people who come after me. Hope was quiet for a moment. When I grow up, I want to help people too. You will. You already do, just by being kind and seeing people's worth. Margaret Ashford's daughter, Sarah, named after Margaret's friend but turning out nothing like either of them, became one of the workshop's success stories. She arrived shy and uncertain, convinced she had no talents worth developing. Lin Mei taught her that everyone had value, that skills could be learned, that confidence came from accomplishment. 3 years after her first class, Sarah opened her own shop in Red Hollow, selling high-quality goods and treating her employees with respect and fairness. She became a voice for change in the town, slowly shifting the culture toward one that valued contribution over status. Margaret herself never fully changed. People rarely did, not completely. But she did stop publicly humiliating those she considered beneath her. It was a small shift, but meaningful for those who benefited from it. 10 years after leaving Red Hollow, Lin Mei stood in the expanded workshop watching 30 women of various ages work on their projects. The room hummed with concentration, with creativity, with the sound of lives being rebuilt one stitch at a time. Elias came in, gray threading through his dark hair now, but still strong, still solid. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "Quite a kingdom you've built here," he said. "We've built. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Maybe, but you'd have found another way. That's who you are. Someone who finds ways." Lin Mei leaned back against him, watching Hope demonstrate a technique to a younger student, watching Mei Ling consult with a woman on pricing strategy, watching all these lives intersect and support each other. "You know what I've learned?" she said. "What?" "That the world tells us we're weak when we're struggling, that needing help means we're failures, that accepting where we are means accepting where we'll always be." She turned in his arms to face him. "But that's all lies. Asking for help takes courage. Accepting help takes trust. And choosing to leave a situation that's destroying you isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing anyone can do." "You tell that to your students?" "Every chance I get. Because too many people stay in places that kill them slowly, convinced that leaving would be wrong or weak or selfish. I want them to know that choosing your own survival isn't selfish, it's necessary." Elias kissed her forehead. "And that's why they come here. Because you give them permission to choose themselves." That evening, as the last of the students left for their lodgings and the workshop fell quiet, Lin Mei and Elias walked to their favorite spot on the ridge overlooking the valley. Hope had long since gone to bed, and the mountains were dark against the star-filled sky. "You ever regret how it happened?" Elias asked. "The way we started? Marrying a stranger and running away to the mountains with no plan." "Yeah, that." Lin Mei thought about it. "No, because if it had happened any other way, it wouldn't have been us. We needed the desperation to push us into taking the risk. We needed the uncertainty to force us to rely on each other. We needed all of it exactly as it was." "Even the hard parts?" "Especially the hard parts. The hard parts taught us we were stronger than we thought." They stood there in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes after years of knowing someone completely. Lin Mei thought about the girl she'd been 10 years ago, standing in that town square being torn apart by people who thought they had the right to judge her worth. That girl would hardly recognize the woman she'd become, confident, successful, surrounded by people who valued her. But she'd also see the connection, the thread that tied that desperate girl to this accomplished woman, the refusal to quit, the determination to build something better, the bone-deep certainty that she deserved more than what the world had offered her. "I want to expand again," Lin Mei said suddenly. "Create satellite workshops in other regions, train more teachers, reach more women." "That's ambitious. Everything we've done has been ambitious." Elias laughed. "True. What do you need from me?" "Same thing I've always needed. Partnership, support, your honest opinion when I'm about to do something stupid." "I can do that." He pulled her closer. "You know what I love most about you?" "What?" "You never think small. Even when you were starving in Red Hollow, you didn't think small. You thought big enough to imagine a completely different life, and then you had the guts to reach for it. I had help reaching. You had an opportunity. You did the reaching." Over the next 5 years, Lin Mei's vision became reality. Satellite workshops opened in 3 different territories, each run by women she'd trained, each offering the same combination of skill building and empowerment. The network grew, women helping women, creating opportunities that rippled outward in ways Lin Mei never could have predicted. Red Hollow changed too. Not overnight, not completely, but gradually. The culture shifted from one of rigid hierarchy to one that valued contribution and character. More families like the Changs moved in, finding acceptance instead of hostility. The town wasn't perfect, no place ever was, but it was better. Lin Mei returned to Red Hollow occasionally, always welcomed now, always treated with respect. She'd go to check on the women she'd trained, to recruit new students, to remind people that change was possible. Sometimes she'd see Margaret Ashford on these visits, and they'd nod at each other, not friends, never friends, but two women who'd reached an understanding. The understanding was this. Cruelty might feel powerful in the moment, but it built nothing lasting. Kindness, opportunity, lifting others up, those were the things that endured. When Hope turned 18, she announced she wanted to expand the workshop concept further, creating traveling schools that could bring training directly to remote communities. You'd be gone months at a time, Lin Mei said, worried. Living rough, facing who knows what challenges. Sounds familiar? Hope said with a grin. Wonder where I learned to take risks for things that matter. Lin Mei looked at her daughter, confident, capable, ready to build her own legacy, and felt a pride so fierce it almost hurt. You're right. You learned from watching your parents do exactly that. So can I do it? Lin Mei looked at Elias, who shrugged. She's not asking permission. She's asking for support. Then you have it, Lin Mei said. All the support we can give. Hope threw her arms around both her parents. Thank you. I won't let you down. You couldn't if you tried, Elias said. You're too much like your mother for that. Watching Hope ride out on her first circuit 6 months later, Lin Mei felt the bittersweet ache of watching your child step into their own story. But she also felt satisfaction. This was what she'd been building toward all along. A legacy that extended beyond her own life, beyond her own accomplishments. She'd been saved from Red Hollow's cruelty by one man's unexpected kindness and her own desperate courage. Now, through her daughter and all the women she'd trained, that salvation was multiplying, reaching people she'd never meet, changing lives she'd never see. That evening, alone with Elias for the first time in months, the students had all gone home for the season. They sat by the fire in their cabin. The same cabin where they'd started this whole adventure, though it had been expanded and improved over the years. I've been thinking about something, Elias said. What's that? About what we've built here, about what it means. He poked at the fire. When I was young and angry and alone in these mountains, I thought I wanted isolation. I thought the answer to humanity's cruelty was to avoid humanity altogether. And now? Now I know that wasn't the answer. The answer was finding the right people, building the right community, creating the right kind of life. He looked at her. You taught me that. You showed me that connection doesn't have to mean compromise or losing yourself. It can mean becoming more of who you really are. Lin Mei felt tears prick her eyes. You taught me things too, that I was stronger than I thought, that I deserved respect and partnership, not just survival, that building something meaningful required both courage and patience. We taught each other then. Yeah, we did. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling, the familiar night sounds of the mountains surrounding them. Lin Mei thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a dusty town square where she'd stood humiliated and alone, to this moment of peace and accomplishment. It hadn't been smooth. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, failures, moments when she'd wanted to quit. But she hadn't quit, and neither had Elias, and together they'd built something that would outlast them both. You know what the best part is? Lin Mei said. Tell me. The best part is that it's not finished. Hope's taking it further. The women we've trained are spreading it wider. The work continues beyond us. That's legacy, Elias said. That's what it means to build something that matters. Yeah, Lin Mei agreed. That's exactly what it means. Years later, when Lin Mei was in her 60s and Elias's beard had gone completely gray, they sat on that same ridge overlooking the valley and watched the sun set over the network of workshops and communities they'd helped create. Hope had 3 workshops of her own now, scattered across different territories. Mei Ling ran the original workshop, having taken over when Lin Mei finally admitted she needed to slow down. The legacy had grown beyond anything Lin Mei could have imagined that desperate day in Red Hollow when a mountain man had stepped in to defend her. You ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been in town that day? Elias asked. Sometimes. But then I remember that I'd already made my decision. I was leaving one way or another. You just gave me a better option than any I'd thought of myself. Still, though, if I'd been a different kind of man, but you weren't. You were exactly who you were, and I was exactly who I was, and somehow that was enough. She took his hand. Maybe that's the real lesson. Not that we have to be perfect, but that we have to be brave enough to choose ourselves, and wise enough to accept help when it's offered, and stubborn enough to keep going when it gets hard. That too. They sat there as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, painting the sky in impossible colors. Below them, lights began to appear in the valley. Cabins, workshops, homes built by people who'd found their own versions of freedom and purpose. Lin Mei thought about all the lives that had intersected with hers, all the women who'd passed through her workshops, all the changes, both small and large, that had rippled out from one desperate decision made in a moment of crisis. The world had told her she was worthless, that she had no future, that the best she could hope for was survival at the mercy of people who saw her as less than human. The world had been wrong. She'd built a life on her own terms. She'd created opportunity for others. She'd proven that worth wasn't determined by birth or status or other people's judgments, but by what you chose to do with the chances you were given. She'd turned weakness into strength, desperation into determination, humiliation into purpose. And in doing so, she'd shown everyone who'd ever been told they were nothing that they could be everything. That was her legacy. Not the workshops or the business, or even the success. The legacy was the belief, passed down from her to Hope to Mei Ling to hundreds of other women, that you could choose your own story, that you could rewrite the narrative others had written for you, that you deserved better, and with courage and support and relentless effort, you could build it. "I have no regrets," Lin Mei said quietly. "None? Not a single one. Every hard thing, every struggle, every moment I wanted to quit but didn't, all of it was necessary. All of it brought me here." Elias squeezed her hand. "Same. I'd do it all again exactly the same way." "Even the parts that scared you?" "Especially those parts. The scary parts were the ones that mattered most." They walked back to the cabin as darkness fell. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something extraordinary from nothing. Not because they were special or perfect or destined for greatness, but because they'd been brave enough to try and stubborn enough to keep going when things got hard. And in the end, that was all anyone needed: the courage to choose themselves, the wisdom to accept help, the stubbornness to keep building even when the world said it was impossible. Lin Mei had learned that lesson in a town square where cruel women had tried to destroy her. She'd carried it through mountains and winters and countless challenges. She'd passed it on to her daughter, her students, everyone whose life she'd touched. The lesson was simple. What the world calls weakness can become the foundation of greatness, if you dare to see it differently. She'd dared, and she'd won. Not against anyone else, but for herself, for the girl she'd been, for the woman she'd become, for everyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough and refused to believe it. That was the story Lin Mei Boon would leave behind. Not a tale of perfection or easy triumph, but a hard-earned truth carved out of desperation and polished by persistence. You could choose your own path. You could build your own life. You could turn the very things meant to destroy you into the foundations of your strength. All you needed was the courage to start. And Lin Mei had started in the dust of Red Hollow, with nothing but patched clothes and desperate hope. Look how far she'd traveled. Look what she'd built. Look what was possible.